Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and students. Thank you for coming for the November meeting of the Council Rock School District Board of School Directors. As always, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. And leading the Pledge of Allegiance, we have two students from Mrs. O'Connor's third grade class. They are Alyssa Axelrod and Kylie Guo.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, when the ramparts we marched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, came through the night, and our flag must still fly. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Very nicely done. That was the third grade class, Mrs. O'Connor's third grade singers from Richboro Elementary School.
And we will now sing a song called Thank You Soldiers, thanking all of the veterans.
When I lay my head down every night and go to sleep in peace, I can stay there knowing all is well while you're standing on your knees, keeping watch, protecting shore to shore in the air and oceans too, defending freedom at all costs for the red, the white, and blue. Thank you, oh thank you, men and women, brave and strong. To those who serve so gallantly, we sing this grateful song. To the soldiers who have traveled on to countries far and near, peace and war, you paid the price for the cause you hold so dear. That we may wake each morning bright and know that freedom reigns, because of your great sacrifice, your country joins to sing. Thank you, oh thank you, men and women, brave and strong. To those who serve so gallantly, we sing this grateful song.
we honor Timmy Longmore, first time for his great service in the military.
Nicely done. Thank you very much.
Boys and girls, thank you so much. That was a beautiful song. Thank you. Set up that jersey. Stage that just right.
Ms. Rice, would you call the roll, please?
Here. Here.
He's en route. Here.
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 Mr. Grupp is on business travel.
Here.
Here.
But I'm here.
Doubly so. Thank you. Mr. Funk, could we have the report from the Student Advisory Board of Council Rock High School South, please?
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, the School Board of Directors, Central Administrators, Dr. Robert Frazier. It's a pleasure to be before you this evening and present Council Rock High School South's Student Advisory Board. This is our first appearance of the 2017-2018 academic year, and I want to thank the students in advance for their hard work and dedication and for being such outstanding ambassadors of Council Rock High School South. And they will endeavor to keep you updated on the many happenings of our school community. So without further ado, I give you Chris.
Well, my name is Chris O'Donnell. I'm a senior at Council Rock High School South. I'm also a third-year student in the Public Safety Program at Middle Bucks Institute of Technology. Middle Bucks hosted the annual Fall Occupational Advisory Committee dinner on October 26th with more than 350 industry professionals in attendance. There is an advisory committee comprised of 15 to 25 members for each of our 22 programs. They meet with our teachers twice a year to tour our labs to assure that the curriculum, software, tools, and equipment are relevant to the trade or industry. The Middle Bucks Dental Clinic is now open to the public. The dental clinic serves non-insured or economically disadvantaged individuals, 18 years of age or older. Students learning to become dental assistants in the dental occupations program work alongside volunteer dentists to provide services. And our student-built house is currently for sale. The 2,240 square foot home is 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, and includes a kitchen, dining room, living room, family room, and a laundry room. The house is built to the highest residential specifications, including 5-foot exterior walls. Our cosmetology students raised $750 to a fundraiser on November 13th with proceeds from all services at Salon Extreme going to the Shriners Hospital for Children. I would like to remind the community that they can learn more about the latest happenings at MBIT by liking us on Facebook, following us on Instagram and Twitter, or viewing our videos on YouTube. I look forward to reporting to you at January's board meeting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Rosenfeld, and I am the 9th grade representative of the Student Advisory Board at Council Rock South. Today, I will be talking to you about the Fall Festival and the Blue, White, and Gold Night. The class of 2018 was excited to sponsor the 15th annual Fall Festival, held on Saturday, October 21st, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It was a festive fall day filled with games, booths, raffle baskets, cuisine from around the world, a live auction, and more. A sampling of items that were auctioned off included golden wings and athletic contest passes, free limousine rentals to prom, travel opportunities, tickets to Winter Ball, class rings, and more. The sponsoring clubs and activities thank you for your attendance. On October 26th, from 7 to 9 p.m., Council Rock South hosted the annual Blue, White, and Gold Night. It was a fun, action-packed evening as the grades competed in many different games. Some of these games included the chicken sling, a dance-off, Westchester volleyball, and many more. The full house and loud cheering truly brought out the school spirit. In the end, the seniors finished in first, the juniors in second, the freshmen in third, and the sophomores in last. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Milivoy, and I'm the 10th grade representative for the CR South Student Advisory Board. I would like to say I hope you all had a great summer, as this is the first time we are meeting this year. Tonight, I'll be telling you about the great show our Golden Wings Theater Company has ran and about our upcoming marching band concert. The Golden Wings Theater Company had showings of Tarzan back on November 9th, 10th, and 11th, with play cuts back in school on November 8th. Everyone did a spectacular job in the show, and congrats to everyone who was a part of it. Coming up on November 28th, after a very successful season by the CR South Marching Band, coming in 8th place in Nationals at MetLife Stadium this past weekend, they will be having a concert in the CR South Auditorium at 7 p.m. And just to remind a couple of things, that the first marking period ended this past Thursday on November 9th. And just one more thing to remind you tonight, that we'll be getting our turkey on, aka having off for Thanksgiving break through November 22nd to 26th next week. It was great to speak in front of you guys again for the first time this year, and I hope you all have a festive holiday season until we meet again in January. Good night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bree Kirk, and I'm the 11th grade representative from Council Rock South Student Advisory Board. Recently at South, Rho Kappa, our Social Studies Honor Society, has hosted a series of events in the spirit of community service. Last month, South held a blood drive where students and staff had the opportunity to donate and volunteer to help with the program. The event was a great success. Rho Kappa is hoping to continue this trend with this week's canned food drive. All the goods collected will be donated to the Wrightstown Food Bank just in time for Thanksgiving. On Veterans Day, students were fortunate enough to hear from speakers who came from all branches of the military. Veterans included those who have fought in World War II all the way to those currently enlisted. It was a great opportunity to honor and thank the men and women who have served and continue to serve our country. The Travis Manion Foundation Club also hosted an event on Veterans Day in the spirit of honoring service of all types. About 50 total students from all grade levels went to Philadelphia and participated in several community service projects, such as gardening and helping to beautify a church. The club plans to hold more community service events in the near future. This Saturday, South will be holding its annual Winter Ball, the largest dance of the year. More than 1,200 tickets have been sold, and Student Council has worked tirelessly in preparation for the event. The theme is Masquerade Ball, so students should expect bright colors, great music, and lots of feathers. The night is sure to be one to remember. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a safe and fun holiday break.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hannah Devlin. It's hard to believe that this is my 4th and final year as a Student Advisory Board member here at Council Rock South, but instead of dwelling on things coming to an end, let's talk about what's happening now at South. In sports news, the women's soccer team made it all the way to states, ending with an amazing record of 18-4-1. The players will be able to look back on this season with pride. Congratulations to Alyssa Skolsky and Alexia Anache on their outstanding performances at the Suburban 1 singles tennis tournament. Alyssa placed second and Alexia finished in 5th. Together, they teamed up for the Suburban 1 League doubles tennis tournament and ended up winning the championship. The men's and women's cross-country teams both had very successful seasons with records of 6-1 and 7-0 respectively. In golf, junior Matt Fleming did an outstanding job representing South in the PIAA East Regional Golf Championship. He just missed qualifying for the state tournament, but congrats to Matt for his strong effort. Before the North versus South football game, there was a ceremony for the induction into the South's Hall of Fame. Current New York Giants offensive guard Justin Pugh was inducted, as well as the basketball star Alex Wheatley. It was a night to remember, and South's blowout victory over North was the cherry on top. Many fall sports teams are having banquets this week to celebrate their successful seasons. Meanwhile, the winter sports teams have started tryouts. Good luck to all. As many of you know, this year's district initiative is Think Kindness. In order to get the ball rolling, there will be a Think Kindness Assembly at South on November 27th. The speakers leading the assembly will inspire students to take action with 2 challenges. The first challenge is to perform measurable acts of kindness within our school and community. And the second challenge is a global competition that may involve donations to impoverished countries. The countdown to Thanksgiving is 1 week, but more importantly, the countdown to Disney is just 218 days. The class of 2018 has submitted their first payment in October and will submit their second payment after Thanksgiving break. Administrators, advisors, and teachers have been working hard to make sure that this is the most exciting trip yet. The itinerary is packed with new options like visiting the world of Avatar and going to Volcano Bay. The water park was supposedly no lines, but I'll get back to you on that. No matter what option seniors choose, they are sure to have a magical experience. Thank you for your attention and enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Our next item on the agenda is the Superintendent's Report. Dr. Frazier, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Good evening, members of the board, and good evening, members of our community. Let me first say how fantastic it is to see a packed house in this boardroom this evening. We certainly appreciate you being here for the beginning of our meeting. And first and foremost, on behalf of the school district, I want to wish an early happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We certainly have a lot to be thankful for in this school district as well as throughout our Council Rock community. So from us to you, 1 week from today, happy Thanksgiving indeed. In the days leading up to Thanksgiving, we are looking forward to seeing our elementary and middle school parents because we have parent-teacher conferences next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So again, parents, we're very much looking forward to seeing you at that time. And this evening, I am especially proud because we have a series of both student as well as faculty accomplishments to recognize. As you can see in here this evening, we have a number of posters set up. This is from an annual fire safety poster contest that we have at the elementary level. And as you can see over on the windows, we also have some photographs from this very contest from past years. So our students get very excited, as they should. And this evening, we are here to present the winners of this contest. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Pete Palestina. Pete, welcome back. Once again this year, it is fantastic to see you.
Thank you, and good evening all. Yeah, this is the 34th year that we're doing this contest, and ironically, the incoming president of our CPCU chapter, I met him for the first time this evening, and I said, "How old are you?" And he said, 34 years old. So he was born the year we first instituted this contest. We had a lot of interesting posters and essays to judge this year, and it was extremely difficult, as usual, to pick the 12 finalists. Ms. Thomas was the judge for the Council Rock School Board. I was the judge for the CPCU Society, and Northampton Fire Marshal Frank Fenton was the judge from a fire safety aspect. As the superintendent said, there are posters throughout the room from the first one back in 1984 when I had a full head of hair to recently where I have hardly any. I was a Northampton supervisor for 24 consecutive years, and at the time I was the liaison for fire safety, or liaison for safety in the community. And back then, in 1984, I contacted the then superintendent of schools and the Council Rock School Board president to see if we could do something jointly in the community for a safety aspect. And it was Pat Poprick at the time that was the school board president. I think it was Dave Black at the time that was the superintendent of school. They said, "Yeah, great." And they said, "How much will it cost us?" I said, "Nothing." I said, "We're going to pay for it, and we'll get the awards out." So it's continued every year since then, and the children are asked to submit their essays or posters to their school teachers, and each elementary school is to submit their best 5 for the finalists in each of the 3 categories. And then the judges convene, and we go nuts trying to select the winner. But this is a contest that, to me, brings safety to the community, because the children learn about fire safety. And when the children learn, the parents are also teaching them and learning themselves. So, and you can almost every week pick up a paper and see where there was a fire that caused injury to property or life or limb. So it's things like these that help promote a safety community. And congratulations to all the children. And we have 5 outstanding fire departments, and most of the children visited each fire station in the 5 communities to do their research and submit their posters. So at this time, I would like to introduce the president-elect of the Philadelphia chapter, Mr. Paul Griffin, to say a few words. Paul?
Good evening. As Pete said, my name is Paul Griffin. I am the president-elect of the CPCU Society of Philadelphia. A little bit about our organization. CPCU stands for Chartered Property and Casualty Underwriter. It is a designation held by about 1% of the insurance professionals throughout the world, actually. And the CPCU Society itself is made up of about 25,000 members who hold CPCU designations, but who strive to promote ethical behavior and continued education within the insurance community. I represent the 450 members of our Philadelphia CPCU Society, who want to thank both the board for having us here this evening, as well as Pete, who's helped us continue this program for 34 years, which is our longest running charitable event that we have. So thank you, Pete, so much for your help with this, and it's a pleasure being here.
To Dr. Frazier, I left an envelope earlier today that had my personal letter of commendation to all the students who were submitted as finalists but did not win one of the 12 prizes, and you'll make sure they get out to
Absolutely.
each school.
Thank you.
So tonight we honor the children before the school board, and then on December 20th, the municipal officials, Congressman Fitzpatrick, State Senators Tomlinson and McElhenney, and State Representatives Petrie and Warren will also honor them publicly at that time. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Thomas. She will call the names of the winners for the presentations.
Before I do that, I'd like to recognize Pete. This has been his personal quest, I want to say, within the school district. Every year, he reaches out to a board member, asks somebody to help out. I've done it a few years. Bernadette Heaton, I think, did it for years. Mark Feilick did it. It's a great honor, but really, Pete's the motivation behind it. He gets it started. He gets the announcement out. He gets us all together, and he organizes tonight. So I'd like to give a round of applause for Pete's work. Okay, so it's my great honor to announce the winners. I'm going to start with first and second grade. And this, I will announce the prize, then the winner, then the school, and then the teacher whose class they were in. If the student, when they hear their name, could come up, we are going to take a photograph. So if they could stand for a photo, and then after the photo, if they could go and stand in front of their fire safety poster or artwork, that would be great. Okay, so let's start with first and second grade. Start with first place, $100 cash, movie tickets, a plaque. Kaylee Moore, Rolling Hills. She's in Mrs. Weed's class. Go ahead. No problem. Just stand for a picture. Great. And first and second grade, second place, $50 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Sophie Erickson, Churchville Elementary, Miss Eisman. Third place, $50 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Allison Buckowitz, sorry if I said that wrong, Richboro, Mrs. Myers' class. Fourth place, $50 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Adeline Martin, Rolling Hills, Mrs. Parker's class. When they're done, if they're okay to stand up front, if they're not, don't worry. We'll call them back up. At the end, we take a picture of everybody, so no worries. Okay, next we have third and fourth grade. First place, $100 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Kylie Williams, Newtown, Mrs. Donovan's class. Good job. Second place, $50 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Jared Chekhov, Welsh, Mrs. Grizzle's class. Third place, $50 cash, movie tickets, a plaque. Goes to Brooklyn Cardone, Hillcrest, Miss Skeller's class. Fourth place, $50 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Goes to Nicholas Romasak. Sorry. Churchville Elementary. Let's get Kavita. Go ahead. There you go, Nicholas. This Nick's second year? Congratulations. Okay, moving on to fifth and sixth grade. First place, $100 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Sarah Tyler, Goodnoe Elementary, Miss Benzo. Second place, $50 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Swara Patel from Holland Elementary, Mrs. Smith's class. Third place, $50 cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Colin Cloud Schneck from Welsh, Miss Belmont's class. And fourth place, $50 in cash, movie tickets, and a plaque. Abigail Newton, Holland Elementary, Miss Murphy's class. So
Who's our first one?
Is she all right to come? I think she's a little shy. So if she would like to come back up, we'd like to take a group photo. Oh, there you are. Haley. Any parents who want to take photos, friends, family, anyone else, feel free to come forward.
Can you move?
Who's that tall guy in the middle kneeling? He doesn't look like he's in elementary school.
Can you kneel down?
34 years in elementary.
Down.
And they get to do it all over again, potentially. Okay, I want to make sure everybody has a chance. Everybody good? Let's give one round of applause to the winners, guys.
Are any of the teachers, principals here? Right around the applause for them. So we're going to get out of here. I would ask the students and your parents to come into the room adjacent to us for extra photos. You're going to leave your projects here. We'll get them to the Northampton Township building, and then after that ceremony on December 20th, then you could take it home. Okay? So how about one final round of applause for Thank you for your time, board members and superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Palestina, and boys and girls, congratulations. You all did an awesome job. Love seeing them.
Thank you very much, all.
Fantastic.
Congratulations.
Go back and get up in here.
Yeah.
Great cross, that'd be great.
Now, as I had mentioned, we actually have a series of accomplishments to recognize here this evening. And next up is a group of our high school students who we are exceptionally proud of. These are our National Merit Scholars from Council Rock High School South. So, Mr. Albert Funk, welcome back to the microphone.
We'll be entering shortly. Each year, educators in more than 22,000 high schools provide the opportunity for their students to participate in the National Merit Scholarship Program. The goals of the program are to identify and honor academically talented U.S. high school students and encourage them to pursue rigorous college studies. Over 1.6 million students took the qualifying test, and 50,000 became eligible for recognition. Of that number, approximately 9,000 outstanding young men and young women will receive scholarships for college undergraduate study. At Council Rock High School South, we are proud to recognize 14 National Merit Scholars, 10 commended, and 4 semifinalists. These students are some of our highest achievers and they embody academic excellence. They're all here now. I would like to call them forward alphabetically to receive a certificate of distinction from our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Robert Frazier, and School Board President, Mr. Ed Tate. First, I will call the commended students, again in alphabetical order. Robin Abrams. Robert Blankemeyer. Kira Broderick. Samantha Lavelle. Colin Lee. Max Polachuk could not join us this evening, but a round of applause in his absence. Durga Ramachandran. Samantha Simon. Catherine Trojak. Grace Zhang. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Council Rock High School South's National Merit semifinalists. And these students are the 15 of the 1.6 million test takers. These are the top 15,000 scorers, and we're fortunate to have three of whom are with us tonight. So it is my pleasure to bring forward Megan Blaustein. Isabel D'Amico. Michelle Wang. And Robert Zhu is our fourth semifinalist. He could not make it this evening. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Council Rock High School South's creme de la creme, the best of the best.
Congratulations all. Thank you very much.
And I had mentioned not only student accomplishments, but faculty accomplishments as well. And this evening, we have two outstanding faculty members who have recently and very impressively won state-level awards. We are exceptionally proud of both of them, and at this time, I would like to call up both Mrs. Beth Lynch and Mr. Mike Fiore. All right, you got to stay up here for a little bit. Mrs. Beth Lynch is our K-12 District Curriculum Coordinator for Art, and she's also the art teacher at Churchville Elementary School. Mrs. Lynch has been named by the Pennsylvania Association for Art Education as the 2017 Pennsylvania Outstanding Elementary Art Educator. There is only one of them in the entire state, and there she is. Mrs. Lynch makes an impact in a multitude of ways. In fact, just today, just a few minutes ago, she got done leading our district's Scooper Bowl, which showcased our students' artwork while raising money for Jackson's Heroes, which will positively impact our community. Thank you for all that you do, Beth, and again, congratulations. Mr. Mike Fiore is our K-12 social worker for all schools in the South feeder pattern, which allows him to serve countless students and families from those 9 schools. Mr. Fiore has been named by the Pennsylvania Association of School Social Work as the Pennsylvania School Social Worker of the Year. And again, there is only one of them, and there he is. Mr. Fiore also makes an impact in a multitude of ways. And again, just today, Mr. Fiore was working with students on supplying the food bank with what will ultimately be 130 Thanksgiving dinners. Again, a tremendous positive impact to our community. Mike, thanks for all that you do, and again, congratulations. And now it's time for pictures.
Thanks, everyone. Good job, Mike.
Thank you.
Dr. Fraser, thank you. Mr. Fiore, Ms. Lynch, thank you again. It's a testament to your great service to the district. It reflects wonderfully on the district, and it's a result of all the great work that you do for our students, which is the most important thing. So on behalf of the board, thank you again, and congratulations. Next on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We would ask that you limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Please consider the fact that there may be young children in the audience or watching this broadcast live on CRTV when you are speaking. It is our goal to maintain a respectful environment so that members of our community have an equal opportunity to address the board without interruption. While the board welcomes your ideas and will consider them in deliberating an issue, we may not necessarily respond to your comments or questions at this time. We have one person signed up for public comment. Anybody else is welcome to speak at this time, but we'll begin with Mrs. Carroll. And when you speak, please identify yourself again and tell us your municipality of residence.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. I don't have any notes tonight, so that might be dangerous. I come here to thank whoever's idea it was to take redistricting and grandfathering off the agenda of academic standards onto the school board agenda. It gives the community more of a chance to know what is going on, and it gives more certainty that more board members will attend the discussion. And on that discussion, I think you have to take an assessment of where you are before you know where you're going. And over about 4 weeks ago, I sent an email to Dr. Frazier asking how many students from Wrightstown actually attend Wrightstown or Newtown or other schools, and I haven't heard back. It doesn't matter that I don't have the information. I want the redistricting committee to have that information. I want the board to have that information, because I think it's important when you're deciding where you're going to spend money to add seats to know exactly where the students are, which brings us into redistricting. There are students right now who live in Northampton who go to Wrightstown. I don't know how many, but there are, have been, always have been for a long time, especially those that live closer to the creek or the dividing line. We had a candidate this last election series that promised that no Northampton student would go up to the north, when in fact, there are Northampton students going to Wrightstown, to Newtown, and then north. And he will only be one if he gets selected of 9. But this is such a emotional issue for parents that it hits a chord with everybody, because everybody, as a credit to these teachers, to the board, to the administration, everybody loves the school they're in. That's all they know. All they know is the school they're in. They don't know about the other schools. I've told this story before. My 4 kids went to this school. When this school was going to close, I was absolutely devastatedly heartbroken. And I tried to work with the school board member from the borough to keep it open or have it used in some other way. But we had a reuse committee of the whole district to decide what its use was going to be, because this school was loved by generations of people who went here. There are still people alive today who graduated in 1954 from this school when it was a high school. One lady worked on our redistricting committee, and her daughter is a teacher at Goodnow, and it's already been through 4 generations of students. But my time is up. I'm looking forward to a thoughtful discussion on redistricting and grandfathering. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carroll. Does anybody else wish to speak during public comment?
Sorry, my computer locked. I mean, it went back on me. I need to turn it back on. But all right. Well, hello. My name is Margaret Jung, and I am from Newtown. I'm also a junior at Council Rock North. And today I speak in response to some conversations I had with several other students who, if not for athletic commitment and as need to study for tests, would have come themselves this evening to give public comment. They were concerned about certain teachers' quality of teaching, and after I, who was intrigued, spoke with them for a while, they and I came to the conclusion that students must be involved in the evaluation of teacher effectiveness used to help teachers teach better and to formally rate our staff. According to the district policy on the evaluation of professional and temporary professional employees, evaluations are conducted by a properly certified person designated by the superintendent. This seems to exclude students, so I realized the policy might need to be changed in order for students to also conduct evaluations. Thus, I speak to you, the school board, and administration to urge you to consider that change, for as I will show, student evaluation of teaching is beneficial and necessary for evaluation to be effective at all. As we all know, teachers are also learners, engaging in professional development to further their expertise in the subjects they teach, as well as to grow in how they engage and lead their students in their learning. Learners should receive feedback from others to help them assess and assess and improve their performance. And currently, teachers in Council Rock formally receive such feedback from their supervisors and school administrators. Yet these evaluators of teaching, though possessing helpful educational expertise, cannot provide the deep and comprehensive feedback that teachers need in order to transform positively their effectiveness in leading students' learning. Occasionally, a principal might find time to watch for a few minutes a teacher instructing his or her students, and administration might judge the teachers' teaching through their students' performance on SLOs and other assessments. However, a few minutes here and there is no match for a student's year or semester-long experience with a teacher's instruction. And as Amanda Ripley, author of the acclaimed book, The Smartest Kids in the World and How They Got That Way, pointed out, test scores can reveal when kids are not learning. They can't reveal why. We need students to provide that why, perhaps through quarterly or semi-annual surveys asking them, through questions designed to elicit helpful responses, how well the teachers have helped them grow as learners and as human beings. Much research attests to that necessity. For example, in a 2009 study launched by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, students, even young ones, were found to more accurately evaluate teacher effectiveness than trained adults briefly observe in classrooms. Therefore, I urge the school board and district administration to please consider involving students in the evaluation of teachers in our district. We students will thank you, for we will learn and grow more. Thank you.
Margaret, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. They're certainly very much appreciated. I will reach out to you so we can have a conversation. Does that sound good?
Yes, thank
Fantastic.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Dr. Fraser. Is there any other additional public comment? Please feel free.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lori Prusage, and I live in Northampton Township. I just wanted to touch base and ask a question regarding the school board policy 103, which is on discrimination. It was first looked at in March. We were told that it would be sent to the solicitor, and we would have a meeting in April, and we didn't have one on that policy in April, and then it was said to be done in July, and we didn't have it in July, and then it was said to be done in October, and as far as I know, it still is with the solicitor, and I just wanted to know when we'd be looking at that policy and revising it as per promised in March.
The chair of the policy committee is on business travel today, Mr. Grubb, so normally I would ask him to respond.
Mr. Tate? Those policies will be reviewed at the next policy committee meeting on November 30th.
So it'll be November 30th? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Frederickson. There we go. Thank you for asking. Anyone else? We'll have a second segment of public comment at the conclusion of the meeting as normal, or near the conclusion of the meeting. Moving on to the agenda, next up is items for discussion. And the first is redistricting and grandfathering. And we're going to hear from Dr. Elliott and Mr. Disco.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. This evening, we are asking the board for some direction and for some guidance as we continue our work with the redistricting committee. And we have two particular areas that we would like your guidance and direction. We're going to provide you with our recommendation in each of those areas, but then welcome your your guidance so that when we meet with our redistricting committee, we can continue to move forward and move in the direction that the board desires. So first, we're going to talk about redistricting. Just as a review, these were the board guidelines that were established back in December of 2015 when conversations with Master Capital Planning and redistricting first started. So these guidelines included balancing the populations across the north and the south, not splitting elementary schools across feeder patterns, eliminating islands of neighborhoods where there's a community that attends one school, but that community doesn't really touch the rest of that attendance area of that particular school. The willingness to cross feeder patterns, moving students from the north to the south or students from the south to the north. Students attending a school that is relatively close to their address, and only redistricting students once. So these were the guidelines that we're currently operating with the redistricting committee, and again, want some additional feedback. So here's some background information that's going to lead to the recommendation that we have that we ask the board to discuss and give us some guidance on. We received some preliminary new enrollment projections, and for the recommendation that we're making this evening, we're going to be using aspects of those projections. We just received them, so we're still combing through them and making sense of them at this point before we're ready to share them at this point. So we chose to use 2022 as the year when we're looking at these preliminary projections, because based on them at this moment, that is the largest growth over the next 5 years. So we used the largest number to kind of help us think through this. Based on those numbers, if we look at the projection and the projected population based on 2022, as it currently stands and as our students are currently enrolled in buildings, the balance of percentage of students across the north and the south you see there in front of you. 43% of the, and this is elementary students, 43% of the elementary students would be in the north and 57% would be in the south, compared to our current percentages of 45% in the north and 55% in the south. So based on the 2022 projections, the population disparity actually becomes greater. We also know, based on the work that we've done at looking at available seats across the elementary schools, that we do have an imbalance of seats across the elementary schools in the north compared to the elementary schools in the south. So currently in the north, including the renovation that will be happening at Wrightstown, as well as capturing all of the classroom space that we could capture at no cost, we have 2,977 seats. That equates to, when you put the seats together, 47% of the seats in the district. And in the south, at the elementary level, we have 3,321 seats, or 53%. So these are some of the pieces of background information that we looked at to help us think about the recommendation that we're making to you and asking for your feedback on.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So the percentage of available seats is based on the buildings, how they're currently used?
That's correct. Plus,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
How they're currently used, plus adding the renovation at Wrightstown, in addition to looking at any of the spaces that we could capture that are at no cost to the district.
And does that, so it doesn't include any dividing of rooms to making small rooms for small group instruction or any of those things that we talked about earlier in the year?
That's correct.
Just to follow up on that, so there were additional spaces that could be captured that the administration did not recommend, which was the dividers, but there were also spaces that you did recommend that came at a cost, correct?
Yes, there were some, like some computer labs, that converting a computer lab to a classroom would cost some money, but that's
Right.
not the spaces that we
Okay,
put
so that's not in
dividers
this. That piece would be interesting to understand, because it is space that you think that we could get back at some point to see where that fell.
Okay. Nice.
Do you want us to wait till you're done, or I can wait, or I can ask? It's up to you. I have just like 2 more slides.
Go ahead.
and- Okay.
I'll ask at the end.
All right.
Can I ask so I don't forget? Is that okay? So I think it's close to what Andy. I will definitely forget. What, and I almost did. So what is the difference, if you know, between the available classes that we have today in each region and after the Ricetown renovations? We know what that is, but the other spaces that you're capturing. Do you have that information?
I do not know that off the top of my head. I mean, Wrightstown, we're adding on, I believe, 5 classrooms. So
we have 5, I get that. What are the additional ones that you're suggesting that we pick up? I think Andy's question was, we can look at the other ones that we're not.
No, I think in that grid that they ultimately showed, they said, we've got these that we can capture at no cost. I think they've included those here,
Yes, the
right?
ones at no
But
cost.
then there were also another set that they could capture at cost. And that's what's not in here. So that's
So
what I
I'd
was
like to
asking about.
just know the number of classroom difference between what we're using today and what you're suggesting here. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
We can get that.
So let me just jump in there real fast because I just pulled up this document. The no-cost rooms are 2 at Holland, 4 at Sulpheinstone, and 1 at Wrightstown. And then, Andy, to your question, it would be 2 at Churchville, 2 at Goodnoe, 1 at Holland, 2 at Marina and Welsh, 1 at Richboro, and 1 at Sulpheinstone.
You know what that total cost is?
I could get back to you.
Okay, I didn't know if you were reading it off the column or something.
It's a PDF, but I can calculate it here.
Yeah, my question is more just to get a understanding in my head about if that changes the imbalance of available seats, and it doesn't seem like it does. If anything,
No,
it seems like it tilts itself.
Yeah, I think the percentages that you're looking at don't really change.
Okay.
Wendy, do you want to ask your question now?
How did we come up with the population growth numbers? Was Sundance providing that information?
Yes, that's from the new set of preliminary enrollment projections that they're working on for us.
It takes me out. Okay.
So those, just so the board knows and everyone knows, we literally just got the new set of projections in.
Also reliable person who gave us numbers last time.
So we still need to do some reconciling in that before we're ready to share that in any form or fashion.
Excuse me, the cost, Robert, for those spaces, they were on the capital plan for this year. We have removed those and deferred them to next year if they're the same spaces we're talking about.
Okay.
It's around $800,000.
That sounds right. Thanks, Doug.
So if capturing 9 classrooms would be $800,000. Is that, I just want to make sure.
If that totaled up to 9, yeah, I'm not sure.
And of those 9 classrooms, 6 of them are in the north, in the south. So I don't think that's necessarily insignificant to the available space that we're talking about, right? Because 6 classrooms could be 175 more students.
Mm-hmm.
So continuing on with the background information that helped us come to the recommendation that we'll show you in just a minute, just knowing that our 2 middle schools are being built with equal capacity is just an important factor to know in thinking about this. Additionally, based on the projections that we have, there's clearly more growth in the south than there is in the north, which is something that we took into consideration. One of the things that we know is that in order to balance enrollment at the elementary schools based on available seats, we know that there's a disparity in the available seats from the north to the south. It's just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about how we need to come to numbers and decisions. Based on the enrollment projections, without moving any students from the north to the south, so based on those projections and the available seats that we currently have, in 2022, our capacity at the north would be 82.4%. That's where we'd be at capacity. And our capacity at the south would be 98.4%. So we would be very full in the southern part of the district. As we looked at the projections, we looked at if we would move approximately 35 to 40 students per grade level from the south to the north, we would be able to then adjust our capacity to the north being at about 91.4% and the south being at 90.2%. So both the north and the south would be a little bit relatively closer together and in balance, although not completely 50-50, because you have to remember that the available seats are a little bit different from the north to the south.
K to 6 or K to 12?
This is K to 6. Thank you. So our recommendation and what we would like guidance from the board on is that we would like for the redistricting committee to really focus their work on equalizing the elementary schools, which will over time lead to balance across the secondary as well as the students move up through the grades. We would work to keep our capacity of the elementary schools as close to 90% as possible, as you saw from that last slide. By moving 35 to 40 students per grade level, we get to 91 to 90% capacity, so it's very close. That's our recommendation. When we think about advantages and disadvantages of this, one of the advantages to focusing on equalizing the elementary is that it will enable us more flexibility at the elementary level when enrollment increases and we have to add a section for a particular grade level in a particular year. With at 90% capacity, we have the space to be able to do that, as opposed to schools that might be at 98% capacity where there's just nowhere to add students. And again, over time, it will help to equalize and balance the middle school and high school, which was one of the guidelines that the board established in December of 2015 to try to balance the north and the south. So it would over time balance north and the south from elementary through to high school. The immediate disadvantages of focusing on the elementary level first is that we still would have a little bit of disparity at the middle school because we would have a larger population in the immediate future in the south. And so there might be some differences in what co-curricular activities students can participate in and how many, just because of the numbers of students. And that would also be true at the high school. But again, over time, that will change as our student populations move. And the grandfathering conversation will connect to that a little bit, but we wanted to kind of pause here with this part first, since we're asking for your guidance on kind of two connected but separate things, to give you an opportunity to ask any additional questions or discuss the redistricting aspect first before we talk about the grandfathering recommendation. Andy.
So you said near term. Ballpark, is this 2 or 3 years of disparity we're looking at? Is it a 10-year journey?
It depends on the grandfathering decision a little bit, what grade levels the board chooses to grandfather. You've already made the decision that our current 9th through 11th graders will be grandfathered. So it depends a little bit on that, but if you think about our current 6th graders, if they are redistricted to whichever middle school they would be going to with the boundary lines redrawn, it would be a matter of 3 years until they're in the high school. So that's when you'd start to see some changes at the middle school within a year or two, depending upon the grandfathering conversation. And then at the high school, it would be just a couple years out.
Okay. So the comparisons that you made north to south, just for the public, are as those buildings and as that line sits today. The reality is that as the redistricting committee does its work, you're going to erase those boundaries and the new north-south, if you will, would be
Yes.
much more equalized. So when you look at capacity of seats, you look at percentage of population, you look at the quality of his offering, the intent is to get as close to equal as we can.
That's correct.
While still preserving as much of a 90%
Yes.
capacity in school to allow for flexibility.
Yes.
Understanding it won't be perfect, but that's the approach you're going to take.
Yes. Now, the seat capacity of the north versus the south, that's not going to change. The numbers that we provided tonight with that, the 3,321 in the south and the 2,977 in the north, that's based on the current configurations of our elementary buildings and includes the addition in Wrightstown and includes the, as we said, the spaces that we would get at no cost. That's not going to change in the foreseeable future. So the seats available will not change, but the numbers of students we can put in those seats is what we're looking to.
So
redraw the
you're
lines and
suggesting for
change.
this point, for sure, there's not a school from the south that might come up to try and balance it if there's rooms to be found at other schools in the south to offset that?
Our recommendation is not to shift an entire school, if that's what you just said.
Just wondering what the math works out as you get into it.
If
And
you
then you might not
shift-
have the answer yet today.
Well, if you shift an entire school, it actually reverses the problem and shifts the much larger capacity to the north than the south. So it's better to not move a school, but move some students instead
Okay.
because of the seat capacity.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I'm confused about what you're asking us to do because I thought the redistricting committee was doing this and making a recommendation to us.
Yes, the redistricting committee is doing the work. What we want from you is guidance on focusing on balancing the elementary schools as a priority. So we'll work to balance out the elementary schools rather than say starting at the middle schools and try to make our middle schools 50-50 and draw the lines based on that and then let the elementary students fall where they fall based on the communities they live in.
I think the redistricting committee should look at it and decide. I mean, that is made up of community members who are impacted by all that. I don't, if we give them this much direction, it just becomes a math problem. Are you moving street A or are you moving street B? That's all they get to vote on. That's all they get to input on. I'd rather see the committee make this decision. If they think that that's what's best for this district, as they look at how the district thinks, if they came back and said, I think it should be 89% here and 91 here, I'd be okay. Like, I feel like if I say to them, fill every elementary school 90%, get out a map and start counting it up. Like, I don't really know what they're doing. Like, I don't know what they're deciding. So my personal recommendation would be that the redistricting committee have the freedom to look at this issue and this problem and come to a conclusion, make a recommendation to us.
In terms of the raw numbers, I don't know if you have them, Dr. Elliott. I wrote down the 2977 number for the north and the 3321 for the south at existing capacity.
That's correct.
And what I'm curious about is the raw numbers of students in the projections. You have those at your fingertips?
I
saw
do.
the percentages, but
I do. And again, this is, to reiterate what Dr. Frazier said, we're still reconciling those numbers and checking them.
and
But
it's the 2022.
these are the
projections.
2022. So based on the preliminary projections that we have, in the south, the projected enrollment for 2022 is 3,267. And in the north is 2,452, K through 6.
And that's 2022?
2022.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to say that I agree with Wendy. First of all, the things that we agreed to in 2015 were one thing, but we at no point in 2015 ever talked about balancing elementary schools. This is an entirely new topic, and I think it is. First of all, I think it should be given to the redistricting committee, but even if we wanted to address it, there's nobody in this room who would address this. This is a huge shift in philosophy of an approach to redistricting that I don't think that this is the appropriate time to even give that direction, even if we wanted to. More specifically, I think that it is entirely appropriate to give this to the redistricting committee because you can't even look at it in a bubble without the benefit of understanding what the data says in terms of the enrollments, and really understanding where the pockets of things are, to sort of unilaterally say we cannot do this, we cannot move an elementary school, this is the better approach. It feels like making a decision in a vacuum that the numbers may ultimately not bear out, and then the redistricting committee is burdened with trying to reconcile a decision that we're making today, or a direction we want to give today, that they can't possibly meet. And so, I mean, Wendy said it very well, and I have a lot of faith in that committee and appreciation for the willingness of the work that they wanted to do. And I say, let them be creative, let them come back to us in a completely different lens, and tell us what the data looks like for you and how you can envision this district, because we can't possibly see it the way they do. And so, I mean, I appreciate this. I'm really curious to see what the new enrollment projections show. It's an interesting story, but to direct a conversation now is very premature, and I think it really does take away from what the intent of how I envisioned that committee to work.
Okay.
Would you, is this your final slide, Dr. Elliott?
Yes.
Very good. Would you go back to the prior slide, please, that's recommendations?
Sure.
Would you explain the primary departure or new recommendation, if you will, that is on that slide, is balancing with the starting point being the elementary schools, as opposed to a balancing, a redistricting that starts from the high school level and the middle school level and then works its way down to the elementary school? Is that what I understand you're recommending?
Starting with the elementary school,
Yes.
Yes. So you could look at redistricting. We could theoretically start with, we know already we're going to grandfather our 9th through 11th graders. We know that we've agreed to that. So we could start with the middle schools and looking at, all right, we know we have equal capacity in our middle schools, and we want to get our 2 middle schools as close to 50-50 capacity as possible, as close as we possibly can.
By necessity, because
Correct.
of the capacity of the buildings.
Right. So if you start from that premise, then where your lines are going to be drawn are going to be based on where that population of students currently is. And that may not necessarily be, when you look at your elementary schools and you balance that out, knowing that you have this disparity in seats across the north and the south in the elementary school, could actually end up having the problem in the north where we're over capacity in the north and don't have enough seats for students because we've looked at it from the lens of the middle school first. If we look at it from the lens of the elementary school and work to try to balance out based on the seats that we have, then we can look look at how that's going to affect as we move up, as those students move up in the grades, and kind of project that through and look at what implications that might have at the middle level.
Good, I understand. Dr. Thorward?
But you're assuming that. You haven't looked
Haven't looked at,
at what would happen if you divided the kids at middle school.
yes, we did.
You did.
Yes.
Then you have projections for what the middle schools are going to look like from now until 2022.
We've looked at the numbers with the middle school, like what our current enrollment is and where that might be in 2022, and if we split them in half. And we did look at what that would mean, and then also looked at that paired with, okay, so then how does that possibly play out at the elementary level? And that's where we came.
How about the reverse? All right, you want to do it at the elementary level. What do the middle schools look like?
You go ahead.
So the number of 35 to 40 is what was needed to do that elementary school balance that you saw, where we're going to shift students from the south to the north to get to that relatively close to 90%, slightly higher utilization in north and in south. So what we're able to do, just again in conceptual terms, is to take that 35 to 40 students per grade level,
look at the current middle school configurations and take 35 to 40 off the total of the Richboro and Holland population and add it to the Newtown population. So that gives us an idea of what that would look like. So it doesn't create a 50-50.
No, because I recollect 277 is the delta. You're not even going to get close.
Right, but again, and I think this is what Dr. Elliott's, and this was the purpose of bringing it before the board to get some direction, because if we balance the middle schools, and which ultimately we balance the high schools, what you're using is 50% of our student population in the north and 50% of the student population in the south. However, our elementary seats are not configured in 50-50, so we would have a very high utilization if we could even accommodate the seats in the northern elementary schools, which are 4 versus the 6 southern elementary schools. So the thinking was to try to do the best of both, to use a higher utilization of fewer seats in the north elementary schools and a lower utilization of more seats in the southern elementary schools, which would then begin to give us a closer balance at the middle and the high school. We will never get to 50-50. The Holland Middle School and South population, based on this approach, would always be larger than Newtown Middle School and North, but they would continue to get closer. And then, again, we're working out through a 5-year projection, which is all we can assume to be close to accurate, and we don't know what will happen after that point.
Well, I'll challenge you that, because eventually I'll have to vote on this. I want to see the projections. I want to see how full I mean, you know, the last numbers I saw had us filling one school to capacity and the other very light. So I'm going to want to see those before, and sooner versus later.
Fair enough.
Can I ask when is the next planned meeting for the committee?
Redistricting committee on Monday.
So I would agree that level of detail in those recommendations seems a little premature. I'm not questioning the work, and I want your recommendations. I always want your recommendations. I wonder even if we could just tailor them back, that, you know, a closer balance across secondary over time is one of the goals, provided everybody is in agreement there. I think the third bullet point is a recommendation, but I would like to hear also what the committee would have to say there. That is one recommendation, and I want you to be able to have the opportunity to make it. I don't know that we as a board, right at this point in time, should be making that recommendation to the committee. And I would think we would all agree on the second bullet point.
And I think that the third bullet point is really a guideline. It's not a hard fast that we are expecting the redistricting committee to figure out 35 to 40 students in every grade level and come to that number. It's more conceptual when you look at balancing out and getting as close to 90% as possible. It equates to roughly 35 to 40 students per grade level. It may not be exactly that because of where lines get drawn and how many students are in communities. So some grade levels may have more, some may have less. You know, that's the hard work that the redistricting committee does, where they actually get down and dirty and looking at streets and communities and really thinking about, you know, logical places to draw lines and what the impact of, if we draw a line here at this street or at this community, what is the impact of that and how does that play out with our goal to try to keep as close to 90% capacity in our elementary schools between the north and the south as possible. So that's the kind of work that they'll do. And these guidelines or these recommendations that we're sharing with you will help kind of guide their work. It's not going to pigeonhole them into only doing one thing, but at least gives them a frame of reference to start the work and do some of the processing that they'll need to do.
Good. Ms. Mulholland.
After some discussion with residents in Newtown Crossing, I already brought this up to Dr. Lambert. Some, you know, the autistic support, Asperger children will still be going to Goodnow after the redistricting, even if the rest of those students are sent to Newtown Elementary. That's a concern for some some parents regarding some relationships with their neighbors, children that they play with. It was more than 2 families that had brought this up. So I don't know how much, I'm not a special ed person. I don't really understand the impact, but I think it warrants consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Thorwood.
And I warned you ahead of time, I'm going to ask you this, and I'm going to ask you this for every grade level. Is that, in your estimation, educationally sound, what we're doing? I mean,
Yes.
I want you guys, you know, if you're going to tell me to fill or not fill a school, I want you to stand behind it. So that looks reasonable, 90%.
Well, the whole premise of this is that we don't want the committee to go down a certain path and then have that work come back to the board and the board say, no, this isn't what we agreed to. So if we're willing to give, a certain level of carte blanche to the committee, administratively, we would be all about that. The difference here is this whole piece about balancing the secondary schools. We're not going to be able to do it, as Barry said, because of the discrepancy in the north-south seats at the elementary level. If we balanced, if we prioritize the secondary level and balance 50-50, then just to be real practical and pragmatic about this, the north elementary schools would be on average at 96% capacity, which we all know what it looks like to pop a section. You better have that classroom. It's not like the secondary level where it's a class size conversation. This is literally before June 1st, you need to have that classroom to expand into. And if you're already running at 96%, that's shaky ground that personally I don't want to be on. So that's why it made more sense to us to balance the elementary level, slightly leaning a little higher at north than south, but pretty much balanced around that 90-91%, knowing that at the secondary level, it's at least going to be better than what it is today.
I think if that's just the question, I always think we should look at this stuff from the elementary school up. That's where the kids start in it. And we've already had a situation where we had a school split and go to 2 different high schools, and we see in fairly recent history what that brought. So, I mean, that's where you're ending up. That, that conversation leads, to my opinion, to starting to talk about splitting in elementary school. And I would not be in favor of that. So if the question is, am I okay with starting at the elementary school as opposed to saying, and so when it comes back and the secondaries are not 50-50, I'm willing to say yes on that one. When I get a little uncomfortable is if I'm sitting in a committee and I'm just imagining myself and you walk in and say, I've got to move 30 to 35 kids, all I'm doing is looking at a street map and picking streets. That's my only job in this. And I had hoped that the committee would have more input. Should it be 90% of the elementary schools, or should it be between 88 and 92, or what is it? And you guys did the work. I'm fully confident in your recommendations. I just want the committee to buy off on them. Mm-hmm. If you and the committee come back in agreement, I'm going to tell you right now, what recommendation that committee makes, I would say there's a better than 90% chance that I will vote for it. I've sat on this board for too long where we had committees do stuff that this board decided they weren't going to vote on. So I'm committed to, these people are doing the hard work. They're from every school. They come back with a recommendation that they've worked out in that group. I'm telling you, there's always something, if I thought something was bizarre, I would never vote for it. But outside of something very unusual, I'm going into this committed to going with what they tell me is the best thing to do. So in that vein, I'd like them to have as much flexibility. If the simple question is, because the middle schools aren't going to be balanced because you're starting at elementary, does that make Wendy Thomas vote again? No, I'm good with starting at elementary. And I'm sorry if I didn't understand that earlier.
It's okay.
Mr. Block.
I'm sorry.
When you initially shared the pre-read, I had called Dr. Elliott just to ask some questions for clarity. And the way I look at this is the goal ultimately is understanding the footprint we have to use it efficiently as we possibly can and get the most balanced offering we can for all of our students in the district. Forget about North and South. We have a North and South today. We're erasing all those. We have Council Rock, and we have 10 elementary schools and 2 middle schools and 2 high schools. And what I'm hopeful for, and I agree with Mrs. Thomas and Mrs. Brooks, that this redistricting committee should be free to provide the direction to us, is that you really have to look at it both ways. It sounds like you already have, and you said, hey, this is the way we're going to go. But, ultimately, the buildings are where they are. You just start to draw circles, and then you do the massaging around that. And that's really the harder work. But if ultimately the goal is to balance those facilities so there's capacity and there's a quality, and it's done in as efficient manner as we possibly can, then that's what I would support, and I would look forward to giving them as much freedom as they have now. If they do the work and they find something that comes up that means we have to find a more creative solution than just trying to put the kids in, trying to put a square into a round peg, then we have to go back to that. But I'd rather than give them more specific direction, I'm good with the approach you're taking. Let's just you really need to go at it both ways, I think. And then show that to us as we make our decision.
Okay.
Ms. Brooks.
So for me, it really comes down to, I think, that there's a disconnect for me between the first two bullets and the third, in that the first two are sort of broad philosophies that allow the committee to work in, with some latitude and creativity. And then you got a third bullet, which is sort of locking them into an idea. And to me, because I've studied this data, I can't visualize, now granted I haven't seen the new report, but even just based on old, when you say 35 to 40 students, I'm trying to understand, well, how would you do that? I'm like envisioning the map. I know a little bit about these numbers. I know some of these bands, and that's what locks it in. So if we were to strike that third bullet, that brings me to a level of comfort. And to address what you said, Dr. Frazier, which I understand what you're saying, that without proper direction to the committee, they could start going down a path, and it's something that, leads in a direction that we don't want. That's, to me, just called communication. We shouldn't let them go off and then hear from them at the time that their recommendation is coming to us. Hopefully there will be periodic updates of just, anything of significance. And it also leads to something in terms of how the community is going to be posted. If they're just going to be in this hollow area and not knowing anything about anything in redistricting for the period of time that this committee is going to meet, I think that's a problem. So, it's all about really good communication and just letting this committee do what it needs to do. And I think by striking that last bullet and just having some more focus on how we all talk to each other and how we talk to the community, it will pave the way for a better process.
I think those are good points. And I think the first bullet point is a very logical way to approach the process. The second bullet point is something I believe I've heard Dr. Fraser talk about repeatedly in the past, which is 90% being a good objective for school capacity. So that also makes sense to me. And the third, I also feel like it's sort of a different animal than the first two, and that doesn't stop you all from saying to the redistricting committee, one way to get at this objective would be to consider moving approximately 35 to 40 students per grade level. There's nothing wrong with you, guiding the redistricting committee in that direction. And I think what I'm hearing from the board is that we all want the redistricting committee to feel as though it has latitude to approach its work with an open mind and creatively, and to the extent that we can be kept apprised of their progress by you all particularly, I think would serve us all well. Anybody? Mr. Weiler.
Well, I had a lot of comments as we started this, but a lot of it is fleshed out, so that's good. I'm glad that Dr. Frazier stepped in and made the comments that he did, because my concern was not giving really much guidance to this committee and then them having the same issues you were talking about, coming back to us with a completely different idea. I don't know if I would be comfortable fine from the administration saying one way to do this is moving 35 to 40 students, but I don't think we want that coming from the board. I think it's logical to, I think the approach you have is absolutely logical. If we're looking at balancing the middle schools, which we don't have a choice but to do because of the capacity, and getting as close to a balance as possible at the high schools, I think we have to start at elementary schools, in my opinion. And that makes the most logical approach. So I appreciate all the work you did, and I think we're heading in the right direction. What is the plan for keeping us updated? Because I know that, I think I remember, Dr. Frazier, that you don't necessarily want us poking our noses into the meetings, right? But how are you going to keep us up to date?
Primarily through written communication. And if there's something that needs to be discussed, we'll have one-on-one or small group conversations. And then from a community standpoint, Denise, that you had mentioned, part of this process, once the committee gets to a certain point and feels good about their work, will be a community-wide presentation that first is in a large group area and then breaks out into separate classrooms by neighborhood. So that way the committee gets avails themselves of feedback from the overall community.
And is the timeline constructed in such a way that the community meetings could actually help inform and change the plan? I mean, because I'll just say that the last time there was a redistricting committee in this district, which was a seriously long time ago,
right.
I was on it, and you know, there was a plan made, but we had at that time, and I'm not suggesting that we need to repeat it, but I'm just as an example, we had 3 or 4 community forums over a period of time where the feedback from those forums helped inform certain changes before things were finalized. I want to be sure that this community forum is not being set up as if to say, this is the committee's recommendation, and now like look at it. I want to know, particularly because I was not aware initially that the community doesn't even know who their school representatives are. So how do parents outside of the committee have a voice into the process and able to give some feedback? You know, and then if this community forum is so late in the process that the feedback and questions can't get appropriately answered, I'm just concerned about that type of communication and what it will feel like to the community at large who has no voice into the process.
So it's twofold. One is that we're going to set up a designated email address, just like we do for many other things. So that's an ongoing piece.
And so it would be kind of, sorry for interrupting, but it would be kind of thing that there's like an FAQ or things so that the public can see the questions that are answered.
Yes.
And that,
Yep.
so every, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I want to say that after the public meeting, the community-wide meeting, that we have 3 or 4 committee meetings still remaining.
Okay.
So there will be plenty of time for that to be analyzed and processed and impact decisions.
All right, good to know. It felt like that community thing was much later in the process where it wouldn't have any significant impact. So that's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Dr. Thorpe.
To Wendy's point, and to kind of allay, you didn't want the committee going down a path we would vote on. Can the board, and I'm looking around, guarantee you an up and down vote on whatever the committee comes up to? And I sat out here the last time we put master capital planning committees together, and we just didn't do it. So I mean, we can up and down. I'll up and down vote whatever the redistricting.
You're talking about the final. You're talking about the final recommendations in the redistricting committee.
Yes. I mean, we'll vote on it. We're not going to hack it apart. Or is Mark shaking his head?
Well, it just all depends. Listen, we can't abdicate the responsibility of redistricting to the committee. The committee is to help us form our opinions and do the best thing with the input from the district. And I don't want the public to think that we're sitting here saying, "You have at it, committee. We're going to do whatever you say we're going to do." And I think I hope that they come up with a logical recommendation that makes sense and that everyone can wrap their arms around. But if it doesn't work, we may have to pick and choose and kind of paste something together ourselves, in my opinion. So I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
I thought what you're thinking when Mike first started talking, and I thought something different at the end. So let me just explain. So sorry. I thought when you first started speaking, Mike, you were saying, can we vote today that we'll definitely vote up or down? And what I think you're saying is, whatever gets presented, can we put it to a vote at that time?
Yes, that's what I was saying.
So, Mark, I don't know if you understood.
I understood that.
Okay, I thought in the beginning you were asking us tonight what we say up or down.
No.
Well,
Okay. All right.
So,
So you're just saying at the end of the day, when the presentation comes back, can we vote up or down on what their presentation? I'm fine with that. I don't care. If we vote it down, we modify it, whatever, exactly. I would be okay with it. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure you didn't.
Yeah, I don't think it needs a vote. I think we're going to discuss this several more times. I think it's way
Not
too
tonight,
premature
I
to
mean,
discuss.
No, no.
No, I know, I understand that. I'm just saying, we're going to be discussing this several more times over the course of the next several months to talk about if we're going to vote on what the committee ultimately recommends or not. So I think we've got plenty of time to get to that. Let's see what they come back with.
I just have one other question. Would it make sense to include in the charge to the committee a review of what the interval should be for redistricting? So is this something, it kind of feels to me that we may be looking at, if we run this course that you're suggesting with the administration, that we may have as close to balance as possible within a 3 to 5 year window. I'm hoping more like 3, right? So does it make sense to formally review the redistricting of the entire district every 3 years? And I don't know if that, of course, it's a board decision, should be policy, but should that be something that we add to the committee for discussion? I'm just asking the question.
My opinion is that that's reasonable. I mean, again, as Denise said, it's been many, many years. We don't want to find ourselves in the situation that we're in right now at Hillcrest. So let's make sure that we're proactive.
I have approached our policy chair about the same thing. It should be policy. I don't know what the window is, but it should be policy.
So can we officially add that to the charge to the committee? Look at the interval?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Certainly.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah, and
Mr.
because, oh, I'm
sorry.
sorry. Not because Mr. Grupp isn't here and I'm occupying the seat, I got to extend the conversation. I'm sorry. Oh, you're going to it. Sorry. I thought you guys were done. All right, sorry. That's exactly where I was going. Go ahead. Sorry.
So quickly, I just want to go back to the 35 and 40 number that was spoken about. I think we were all in agreement with the conceptual plan and not locked into a number. However, it's hard to understand a concept if you don't get a sense of what the movement of students would be. So that was the purpose of the number. And it also helped to serve for us to get back to the board the response about what the cost is to redistrict if we grandfather certain groups of people. So we couldn't come up with a cost estimate without having an approximate number of students that would be impacted by grandfathering. So that 35 to 40 is the same number we're using to give you these figures. So let's start with the last bullet first, because I think the board has been pretty clear that our current high school students will remain in their current high schools. And we'll show you what the cost for doing that looks like, but that is probably the simplest of the grandfathering conversations based on what we've heard from the board so far. We're speaking to this again as a recommendation because there's really 2 conversations that have happened. So we're going to tell you what we believe would be the best approach coming from the administration, but show you both possibilities based on some of the conversation the board has had. So the recommendation would be that as the redistricting committee finishes its work, that our current 8th grade class, really at 3 middle schools, Richboro, Holland, and Newtown, would be redistricted to the new sending patterns. So they would go to north or south based on what new lines are drawn. The next step is that we would recommend that the current 7th graders in their current middle schools remain, which would include all of Richboro Middle School 7th grade going to Holland Middle School, so that they would remain as a cohort group for that year. So they would be the recommendations we would make. You'll see on the financial piece of this where we showed the cost differential if you were to grandfather all current 7th grade students all the way through graduation. What that does is a couple of things. That slows down significantly that balance that we are hoping to achieve between the middle schools and the high schools, and then also adds some additional costs, which really typically fall through transportation. So we'll show you what those look like. So this is based on the recommendation of grandfathering only the current 7th grade students and all of the high school students. So for the first year, which is 18-19.
I'm sorry, Barry, just for clarity. So you're saying that the existing 7th graders at Richboro would go to Holland for 8th grade, and then if they fell in an area that got redistricted to north, they could potentially go to north?
Just like the current 8th grade would do, correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the cost next year to grandfather the high school students comes at about $54,600. And for those middle school students, those seventh graders that would remain at Holland Middle School, would run at $18,200. All of these costs do not reflect fuel. These are numbers of buses and numbers of hours that the buses will be on the road. Then you'll see that it will begin to decline because now we're only talking about high school students and fewer high school students as we move through the progression of years. So in 1920, we're at 36,400, and at 2021, 18,200. The grand total would be approximately 127,400 plus fuel. So that would be the total cost based on the recommendation that we made. If you look at the second option, which is grandfathering seventh grade students, current seventh grade students, all the way through graduation in their current sending patterns, you see the cost differential. So I won't go through each year because you can see, again, it works based on number of years and number of students, but the collective total over the course of the multiple years, 6 years of doing this, 5 years actually, is $273,000. There cannot be any other numbers placed on staffing because all that is based on course selection, and you'll never know if you're going to add sections or delete sections. But the transportation costs are the ones that at least we can factor in at this point in time.
Next question.
Sure.
Would it be possible to do this but allow that if somebody appeals to be at a different high school and is willing to provide transportation, that that's freely given, that they don't have to jump through 100 hurdles to do that? So that becomes a class size issue more than a transportation issue. So if I go to Newtown Middle School and I am redistricted, I know this is the backward scenario, but I'm using it anyway, and I'm going to go to South, and I, for whatever my reasons are, doesn't matter, want to or go to North, and I am willing to provide my own transportation to get there, will we freely, do you have any objection in your recommendation to freely allowing that?
I don't think so, no. I mean, it's not a.
Take transportation out of the
Right.
decision. So
So therefore, it's not a cost issue. You know, recognizing that the balance issue is adversely impacted. But
So here's the part that I saw in the past with some of this redistricting and busing, particularly at the high school level. The buses run at 50% capacity at best. My ability to get my ninth grader a ride, even if I can't do it, is strong. So transportation for me to arrange, if it's important to my student for some reason, might be doable. It also might, I don't want to speak for everybody on the board, my sense of conversation is this board's not overly interested in tearing these kids apart. They would prefer to grandfather kids all the way through. The costs are a lot. I think it is a compromise that might make it easier. It might make it easier to say that if it's an issue for you and you wanted to go there, we wouldn't, normally I think we have to have a list of reasons. We have to have some, in our chances to change high schools, we have to have some real cause, I would say.
Right.
So this would just be saying, if you ask, you get to do it. So I would throw that out as food for thought. If this board adopts a recommendation, I don't know if they will, but just food for thought.
And you're not talking about a massive population. You're saying a portion of some of the seventh graders, right? So you might.
You'd send a note home and you'd.
No, but I'm just talking the total kids you're going to ask is total population, 30, 40 kids, maybe.
No, each grade.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, each grade
You
all
got
the way
4
through.
grades of high school as you grow. I mean, that's why the busing costs
I thought we were
800,
talking about the seventh graders.
800,000.
So I think the one caution that we do want to put into place, or at least consider if that is something that we want to possibly include in grandfathering, most especially as it relates to athletics. Because I get concerned, especially with PIAA rules, that we would not want choices being made for athletic reasons. And one of the reasons why we put some parameters, if you remember when we did Richboro, it was based on having a sibling in that school, so you weren't splitting siblings, which created a different reason for
But you're only talking, if I'm just a regular everyday student and I was always going to South and I'm still going to South, I'm not getting a choice. You're talking about a kid who's in 8th grade right now, that neighborhood that child lives in gets redistricted to North. Their parents feel there's a strong reason. Frankly, to judge whether it's athletics or not would be way too difficult. They get the choice. So you're not opening up to every kid in the 8th grade, only those kids who are being redistricted to a new high school.
I understand, but I want to make sure you understand the potential issues with that. So when we develop sending patterns, it's our responsibility to have sending patterns that are defined by the district. We do have some responsibility to determine if it's an athletic transfer because both the sending and receiving principals must sign off that it is not. And if it gets contested that it is, then it goes to the District 1 committee for a hearing. So I want to throw that out there. I don't know what it means. We could certainly talk to the district steering committee, not our district steering committee, the PIAA steering committee, to see if those things would be problematic. But that's the only caution I would have with an open-ended approach.
So my understanding was once we decided to not split Richboro Middle School, that for a year or two, we allowed this freedom of transfer with less arduous process than normal. They still had to apply to the superintendent's office or some, head of education. They had to apply to somebody, had to fill out a form. They had to do some work. It wasn't just like, oh, today I think I'll go to North. Tomorrow I think I'll go to South. And once you made your decision, I think you were committed for a year. So again, we might want to say you're committed for your 4 years. I don't know, but I'm not opposed to having rules around it. But for me, my struggle and what you've presented, and I'm sorry, I'm the first one to talk. I'm talking too much, but I would prefer to grandfather, but $800,000 is a lot of money. And some of those kids might be fine going to the new high school. And so I feel like if I just had a little wiggle room that allowed me, a kid who was really super stressed, to make sure they got to a good place while we're going through this transition, it would make me feel better in my vote. I'll shut up. I'm sorry, board member.
I didn't see $800,000. Can you show me the $800,000?
It's on our.
No, I think what Mrs. Thomas is referencing is what we were going to present last at the academic standards. Are you referencing the?
Yeah, I have the memo attached. It's attached to this meeting too.
Yeah, well, so that 800,000 was a team, an additional team that would be needed at Holland Middle School if we didn't shift the population. Right now, what we are beginning to see, again, because of the new projections, is that team is likely going to be needed whether we move students or not.
Okay.
So we can't move enough students to not need an additional team. So that's.
I did read that update. I'm sorry.
No, you didn't get that update.
Okay.
That's what tonight was about, because we thought that it was new information that we just received. So.
Okay.
Well, I always read that 800,000 as the cost of doing business. That we're here to educate kids. We need a team. These are the costs that are more relevant to me. I'm sure it's going to come as no surprise. I would like to grandfather everyone from 7th grade up. I think that there's I have tremendous concern about understanding we're going to move everyone from Richboro Middle School to Holland Middle School, but then we're breaking them off as an even smaller percentage of the population into their high school, which I think is way more difficult. If I'm hoping that we can get some consensus on redistricting everybody, but if that's not the case, it actually might be better for them socially and emotionally and mentally to, move into their middle school sooner when they're a larger percentage moving in, rather than getting into the high school. But to me, the fact that these decisions are, this current 7th and 8th grade have been like on bated breath for a long period of time. Our redistricting timeline has just shifted, because of the issues with the enrollment projections and things. So we're now moving it closer. These decisions are going to be made much closer, much further out towards the spring. And I'm just concerned that we don't have appropriate ways to really communicate, provide opportunities for feedback and communication to the students. And I'm worried about these kids. I think that these are very tough things for them to understand in this, at that age and what's going on. I would like to see the grandfathering all across the board. I actually don't think that's a lot of money for what it will give us in helping these kids.
And I'll say to you that we're not necessarily looking for a decision from you tonight. There were questions about cost for grandfathering. The board had indicated what would it look like if we were to make these moves, redistricting or grandfathering 7th grade all the way up, or just our high school. So this was really a response to an inquiry that the board had presented. There's not a need for you as a board to make a decision tonight. You're welcome to if you choose to, but this was just to give some input to that conversation that you were considering, because some of the board members had indicated I might be interested, but cost is a factor for me. So we wanted to show what that looked like.
Dr. Thorwood. I think, and the rest of you can disagree if you want, we've dragged this out long enough for the 7th graders. Let's just make a decision and grandfathering. There's not, I agree with Denise. There's this, if they're in Richboro now, send them through the South and start at the 6th grade. The 6th grade hasn't entered middle school yet. Send them to the right redistricted middle schools. But the 7th graders in Richboro, and that's what we're talking about, the 7th graders in Richboro Middle School. I don't know how many it is, but it's not that many. Send them to South and let them finish their high school like they had planned on. And the longer we wait, the harder we are on these kids and the families. Let's get this, let's get this off the table. That's where I'm at. I can spend that money to put these families at ease.
Mr. Block.
Well, we got new news tonight about that $800,000 piece. Forget about, take that off the table for a second. I don't have a problem with this. But if this drives that 800,000, then I do. So I'm not going to be in a position or here tonight to take a position. I'd really like to understand what that means, because if we have to spend 100,000 and then do this because it's the right thing by kids, I start to wonder about the schools in the South versus the North, and goes back to the redistricting and finding other creative solutions. So I'm going to sit tight for tonight.
So I'm going to ask a question going forward when we have these discussions. If we could have these slides in our packets, it would be helpful. So we can reference, at least for me, so we can reference it back. Can you go back to the previous slide for me, please? Okay. A handful of meetings ago, we had a discussion about grandfathering, and it felt to me that night that we had kind of headed in a direction of grandfathering the kids that were in Richboro Middle School, and then and we got some feedback from the community. Thank you very much for kind of taking that off the table, and now we feel really comfortable. And then the next meeting, we decided a different direction. So I'm of the mind that I'd like to see us move forward tonight. This is, so 127,000 compared to, flip that over again, 273. We spent that easily exploring Hillcrest Elementary for a bill that we're not doing. So for me, I'd like to move forward, and I would like to grandfather the children going back to 7th grade at Richboro, at the middle schools.
Anyone else?
I'm good to spend the money. I was $800,000 was going to be $1 million. I'm also good to give the kids the choice. I'm also good to give the kids a choice. So we can say you can go where you want, or you can go if their neighborhood. I'm good with letting the families have some choice in it. If that causes you guys more problems, I'm good to grandfather them too. So either way.
I'd like to comment on that.
Well, yeah, because there's kids. What you have is you have families who that's their oldest kid, and their next one's going to come up and go to North, and they just as soon have their older kid go to North. And you've got families who they want their kids to stay with those and whatever. I'm just saying I'm good with choice. If there's a family that lives in a neighborhood that we are ultimately going to send to North, and they want to go to North now, I don't care. I'm doing the grandfathering because I think I'm doing a good thing. So if there was a way to manage it to allow for some individual selection, we'd probably end up in a better place. Either way, I'm good with grandfathering, current 7th grade. And this is good work, you guys. Thank you. It's great information.
I'd like to comment on that. I too would like to see choice for the families. I've talked about it several times, but I don't know if I buy into Wendy's. If a streamlined approach, anybody who wants to can go, but I think that the choice is very, very important. And even if it's a class that we offer at North for a year, and these kids are ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, they can make these arrangements for themselves with their parents. They're getting ready to do those things in college. We should give them the benefit of the doubt that they can take care of these things and do what they need to do. So I'd like to see that, and I'd be happy to present a motion.
We were just discussing that. That's what that little sidebar was about.
I figured that.
And yeah. So I wanted to explain that. What we're talking about in terms of the grandfathering is not within the purview of the redistricting committee, correct?
Correct. This is after redistricting is done.
Yes.
This would just be affecting the students that could be impacted by that redistricting decision and allowing them to stay in their current feeder patterns.
No, we're saying they're not impacted.
They're not, correct.
We're taking
Correct.
them off the table.
Right, that's
So what we're talking about is giving direction to the administration as to the will of the board regarding grandfathering. So I asked Dr. Fraser if he needs a motion that would be helpful. You raised that question, Dr. Thurwood.
I think we need a motion so we don't have any more confusion for the community. Because this is not only about direction to the administration, it's about our feelings to the community so that it's an affirmative movement tonight, whether it's a positive or negative vote. It is also absolutely going to drive the redistricting committee because we have to know where these children are coming from and where they're going to for this period of time.
Fine by me, of course. Mr. Cox.
What would do we want to take maybe a 5-minute recess, or Mr. Cox can draft a motion?
Sure. Well, let me ask this. So I'm not sure I understand who. So the grandfathering piece is not within the core mandate of the redistricting committee. Correct?
Right.
So the redistricting committee is going to make a recommendation to the board. The board is going to vote on it up or down or make changes to it. And as a part of that redistricting plan that the board votes up or down or modifies, the board tonight is deciding that regardless of what that plan is, 7th graders at Richboro Middle School will be grandfathered.
All 7th and 8th graders, 7th and up, that's what.
7th and 8th at Richboro Middle will be grandfathered.
7th and 8th total.
We'll go to 7.
We'll go to 7.
No, we'll stay in their existing feeder pattern.
Now, I want to make sure it's not just Richboro Middle School.
Yeah.
Because the redistricting
No,
committee hasn't made a decision yet. It's all Strike 7th Richboro graders. Middle
Yeah,
from
it's
your
just
comment.
7th. The question is that redistricting is one thing, but we're saying after that decision is made that the current 7th graders and up will not be subject to that. They will follow their existing plan.
feeder patterns.
Okay. If we
So I think
want
you just need consensus there,
a
right?
motion and a second, then we can do that, or we can simply agree that there's a consensus.
We need a motion and a second.
That's fine.
So give me
5 minutes.
to meet
Very good.
Mr. Desco.
Thank you, Mr. Biley. Good suggestion.
Can
5
we
minutes,
go on with
please.
committee reports while he works on that? I mean, he doesn't care about committee
That's
reports.
That's a fine idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great idea.
Make it out before midnight.
We can
Okay.
talk about it some more.
Flying around. All right. While
No,
Mr.
I'm
Cox
about to
works
pass out
on
some
the motion regarding grandfathering,
Who turned the heat up?
we'll go ahead with, yeah.
I wasn't.
I was glad for the temperature adjustment. And we're going the other. All right. Committee reports, please. Academic standards, Ms. McKesson.
Yes, we met on Thursday, November 9th. We had 2 discussion items. It was actually a fairly brief meeting. The first topic was presented by Dr. Lambert, and it was a discussion regarding sleep and school start times. Dr. Lambert, if I could just put you on the spot, only because I found, and to be clear for anybody watching or listening, Dr. Lambert attended a conference with Andy Rowe, and I was very interested in the way you thought about the topic, or you felt going into the conference, and the way you felt coming out. It was just very interesting for me.
It was a topic that I really did not have a lot of knowledge of. I certainly had seen headlines in popular magazines here and there, but I had not really paid much attention to the literature on it. So I went because I was asked to go, and within a couple hours, I was compelled to think really hard about. I kind of felt bad that I hadn't paid more attention to it because the arguments for why we should delay start times up to 8:30 for adolescents were rather compelling on a medical, biochemical, biological, sociological, safety for children, all kinds of reasons why it was critically important.
Thank you.
Can I comment on that before we move on? So I brought up here several times, it's kind of like Rick Averson with the paying for parking, but and it came up as far as high school choice tonight. Has there been any discussion about giving our students a choice to have a elective program, or maybe elective is the wrong word, but a program at, say, Council Rock North, where we need to fill some space, where we can have some students start at a later time? I'm sure there are teachers that would want to start an hour later. I guess we're talking about an hour later. Some of the logistics they can take care of themselves if they have to take care of after school activities or getting to and from school or whatever the case may be. But I'm happy. I think it's great that you went to this program and you brought back some good information. But has there been any discussion about that?
Here in Council Rock, I'm not familiar with there being any, I'm not aware of any discussion on that. I know that some of this, there were school districts from all over the country that talked about their experience with it. There are some that do, I think, the opposite of what you're referring to, which would be you can optionally come in early. The school day starts at 8:30. However, you can choose to come in a period earlier if you want to.
Well, Chuck, what I'm thinking of is maybe it could be a crawl, walk, run kind of thing. Give us an opportunity to kind of beta test it and see if there's the kids interested, staff interested, that kind of thing. So again, I've brought it up at least a half a dozen times. I'll continue to bring it up because I think it's a good idea, but maybe it's something that we can explore. What do you think?
So we had a lengthy conversation at Academic Standards about later start times and a community committee and starting one. Am I remembering the wrong thing?
No, you are not.
Okay, because you didn't say that one more. So we had a lengthy discussion about high school times and that there is some groundswell maybe in Bucks County and that we would be interested in doing that. And I think we're trying to give the administration some time to see what that looks like. That's a little different than what you asked. That was a full-blown, you were saying more optional kind of thing. But I think there is some groundswell currently to look at start times and have a discussion as a county.
Again, I'm just trying to give it an opportunity to maybe kickstart a little bit. So if you start it with a smaller group of people and a beta test to see how it is, that's been my thought all along.
Well, I'm sorry, I was on a business trip and I haven't had a chance to watch the meeting. So the conclusion was that we would move to do things to help move this along. Is that okay? I've been a strong proponent of this. I mean, the American Medical Association, the American Association of Pediatrics, the American Association of Nurses, like every leading medical association recommends this for the social, mental, physical health of students. And I've said that I think that this is so compelling that it's really only a matter of time, but it's if not when, because I think ultimately these things are important. And the data for what it does for students health-wise, it cuts down on car accidents, mental health referrals, all that. I mean, it is very compelling if you start reading any of the literature on this. And so I'm delighted to hear that there might be something to help move this forward. And I volunteer to have a part in that.
Ms. McKesson.
Yes, another discussion that we had was surrounding the school calendar. There is a draft that is posted at this point on the district website for everyone's review and input. There is an email address that has been set up, calendar@crsd.org, for anybody to provide feedback on the proposed calendar for the next school year. Our next meeting, I do not have the date in front of me, but we will be discussing student achievement.
Thank you very much. Facilities Committee is chaired by Dr. Thorwart.
Yes, most of what we talked about will be on the consent agenda when we get to it tonight. We had a facilities improvement update for the two middle schools, a discussion of the Wrightstown Elementary School additions and renovations, a potential phased work for the Rolling Hills Elementary School additions and renovations. We just started on that. We had Doug's capital improvement project update list for the summer of 2018. We beat him up a little bit, but we did give him some money to keep the schools operational and functioning. On the consent agenda tonight will be a motion to engage professional services, architectural engineering services for Rolling Hills, start that process moving forward, along with some equipment bids and some material bids. And then a big discussion that started off our meeting was a custodial agreement. We have gone out to bid. Doug, fill me in on any of this, but the board has just received a packet on the custodial bids for, we had 3, correct?
We had 6, but
6.
three are reasonable and worthy of.
We have 3 that we're going to interview in the coming weeks, and the board just got a packet tonight, so that will be ongoing. So that's the report for the last facilities meeting. It was on November 2nd. Doug, do you know when the next one is? I don't off the top of my head.
It's December 14th.
14th. Okay, December 14th will be the next. Thanks.
And we got an update on the middle school projects.
Yes.
And they're both
on time and will open in the fall of 2018.
And under budget.
And under budget.
And under budget. Amazing. That's
Doug,
wonderful.
Holland Middle, I was in it on election day. Looking good. Looking real nice. So the kitchens, for those who haven't seen, the kitchen at Holland Middle has been out of commission for most of this school year. It's now operational. The kids love it. So.
Thank you. Finance Committee is chaired by Ms. Thomas.
We had a report from Cornerstone with some good progress on our earnings. We talked about the budget meeting the Act 1 limit. There'll be that item's on the agenda. We also looked at the budget calendar. We approved moving forward with a timekeeping system and the purchase of natural gas. I think they're probably in consent. We already approved them at committee. They're on consent. Well, next meeting will be on the 14th. TFM will be there, talk about debt service. It's probably the biggest item. I think we'll also talk about bids. Bid agenda, you said? That's it.
Thank you. Policy Committee is chaired by Mr. Grupp, who is on business travel. And Mr. Frederickson, what did you say, please, the date of the next? November 30th. Thank you very much. Ad hoc Master Capital Planning Committee's on hiatus, correct, Mr. Block?
That's correct.
The Middle Bucks Institute of Technology, Ms. Mulholland.
At the meeting, we discussed how MBIT is operating at 75% capacity, which is rather low. And so our percentage of students going from Council Rock has decreased. And it's worth mentioning that MBIT offers training and certification for many of our current high priority occupations that have starting salaries equivalent to a college graduates. And just a few of the many examples are computer programmers, dental hygienists, nurses, most of the building trades, carpenters, HVAC mechanics and installers, electricians, plumbers, and other mechanics. This would allow your students to be career ready, way ahead of their graduating peers. And please consider, it's a great school.
Thank you very much.
Mind if I add to that?
Please.
I wasn't able to make that meeting because of work conflicts, but I did have the opportunity the other night to speak to the dean of the business school at Bucks County Community College. Now you'll remember that last year MBIT signed an agreement with Bucks County Community College, not just MBIT, but all the technical high schools in Bucks County with Bucks County Community College with a what is the phrase to go to Bloomsburg University? Matriculation. Yes, yeah. Thank you. Matriculation agreement, and that's been getting some traction in other parts of the county, but not so much at MBIT. So it's something that I'm hoping our counselors are talking to the students about. And this person, the dean of the business school, was explaining to me that a student from, I think it was Lower Bucks High School, technical high school, now has her associate's degree when she's finishing up her senior year. So at 18, she's graduating from high school with an associate's degree as well. So it's not a it can be an alternative to going to college, but it's also a great way to get those college credits before you even leave high school. So there's a lot of great opportunities. And as I said, I'm looking right at Mr. Desko. I'm hoping that our counselors are talking about this quite a bit.
Thank you very much. Next committee report would be the IU. Ms. Brooks, please.
There has not been a meeting since the last time we met here. The next meeting is actually this coming Monday.
Thank you very much. Council Rock Education Foundation, Mr. Violet.
Thank you. So we had a great event with Richard Kine last Friday night. I'm not sure if anybody on the board was able to make it, but it was well attended. I think, were you there, Dr. Thorne?
No,
Oh, okay.
I heard about it.
Yeah, I think it was well attended. I had a conflict with that also, but well attended, raised some money, and it was a fun event. What we have coming up next is the All Rock Reunion. Now, this will be the third year, and we've had over 100 people show up each time. It's the Friday after Thanksgiving, so if you're a graduate of Council Rock or a friend of a graduate of Council Rock, or you attended a couple of years, Mr. Block, you could show up too. So
I gotta pay double, right?
It's only $15. It's a lot of fun. It's going to be at La Scala. That last year La Scala hosted it as well. It is from 4 to 6 Friday, November 24th. If you have any connection with Council Rock, come out and have fun. We give away some prizes. There's some retired teachers that show up, and it's again a good time. And then the second thing is the Council Rock Education Foundation Teacher Staff Recognition Program. So I'm just going to read this. The Council Rock Education Foundation Teacher Staff Recognition Program provides a unique and meaningful way to thank and recognize a teacher, mentor, or staff member with a tax-deductible gift to the Education Foundation. You can designate the teacher or staff member, or plural, you wish to recognize, and a beautiful student-designed card is sent to each staff member acknowledging your gift and appreciation. Obviously, to learn more about this program, go online to creducationfoundation.org or pick up a form in any of the Council Rock schools. Again, all donations are tax-deductible and are invested directly back into Council Rock classrooms. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. We'll move back now to the discussion of redistricting and grandfathering, specifically grandfathering, and we have a motion prepared.
Yes.
Dr. Thorward?
With pleasure. I move to grandfather all current 7th through 11th grade students, being the graduating classes of 2019 through 2023, in their current feeder patterns throughout graduation.
Second.
All right, who has the privilege of the second? I heard Ms. Brooks. Okay.
Should the board hold a second round of public comment for this?
Yes.
Should the board? Yes.
Yes. Good. Thank you.
The floor is open for public comment. Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Oh, okay. Good. Good. It should.
It should.
It is.
Good.
It is.
Good. Thank you.
So the floor is open for public comment on the question of grandfathering. The specific motion, actually.
This is such the right thing to do. You all seem to agree, and to wait and keep these kids waiting just wasn't fair. And if you're talking about moving 30 or 40 kindergarten students up to the north, nobody from the feeder patterns are going to be totally different. They're not going to be what they are now. They're going to be totally different. So you don't have to worry about that, because that's not going to happen until the current 5th grade hits 7th grade. Everybody's going to go the way they normally would have went, the way they've been going, and I think that's great. I hope you all go for it.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. Anyone else wish to comment? All right, no further public comment. Board comment.
No, I'm just getting ready to vote yes. Sorry.
Board questions.
Yeah, I have a comment, given the comment I'd made previously. I'm going to go with this because I think it's the right thing to do for kids. The cost annually isn't much. But that being said, I still have a real concern over the redistricting and the potential that could cost an additional $800,000 because of an extra section in the south. So I'm looking forward to see what that comes up, because the point of redistricting is to drive efficiencies, not to increase costs. So, my vote to support the grandfathering, is going to be a yes. I think that's the right thing to do. But, from the overall topic, I'm going to be really interested in seeing how we drive efficiencies versus increasing costs in the system.
Thank you, Mr. Block. Anyone else wish to comment? All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote, please. Ms. Rice? I caught you off guard. Actually, you know, I'll take that back. Are there any objections to the motion? Hearing none, please record the motion is passing unanimously. Thank you.
Is that something I would imagine is probably appropriate in the next update that goes out, the next weekly update for the school district? That
I was thinking tonight, but.
Yeah. Well, there's a direct list. I mean, that's a big deal. It's a big
I'll
deal.
just say I'm getting texts from parents right now. So congratulations to all of us. This is a great gift for our community.
Good. Good. Nice moment of unanimity. Moving on to the consent agenda. Mr. Block, would you read the motion, please, for the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda items A through O as contained in the attachments to this agenda, subject to audit.
Second.
Comments, questions?
Can we pull item F out? Just, I think it deserves a little bit of conversation.
We had a lengthy conversation at committee, that's why it wasn't there. Just so you know.
I know we did.
The natural gas purchase?
No, the request for proposal for architectural services to Schrader for Rolling Hills.
That's, I think.
Oh, that's not.
That's not in there.
The natural gas.
It's at the end.
Looking ahead to the action items.
That's a
That's at the end.
Please forgive me.
That's why I said the
You're
natural gas thing, Matt,
Please
Mark.
forgive me.
Yeah.
That's
Well, no,
Mike's
this-
bad. He planted the idea in your head.
I'm sorry, I did.
The new structure of the agenda does get confusing, but it is, it's better once you get used to it. So on the consent agenda, are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Ms. Rice, would you record this motion is passing unanimously? Now, we move forward to items for board approval. Item A, desktop computers, laptops. Ms. Mahone, would you read the motion, please, for item A?
I move to approve bids number 17 through 38, desktop computers, laptops, desktop computers, laptops, removal at a cost not to exceed $685,521.70, subject to audit.
Second.
All right, the second comes from Mr. Block. All right, any questions, comments?
Mr. Frederickson, this is just usual upgrades, replacements of electronics?
No.
Okay.
It includes the normal upgrades and replace it, but it also includes the initiative that we started this year with replacing the computers in the classrooms for the teachers from desktops to laptops. So every teacher at the elementary level will now have a laptop.
Which is what I wanted to hear.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good, and again, I'm glad you raised the question. That was discussed at committee, and
Yeah.
it's a good initiative. But I'm glad you asked the question. Any further questions, comments? Any objections? Hearing none, please record this motion is passing unanimously, Ms. Rice. Item B, the approval of a bid. Dr. Thurwood, would you read the motion, please?
Sure. I move to approve bid number 17-4999, sand storage and server to ASK Technology in an amount not to exceed $66,790, subject to audit. Second.
Questions, comments? Objections? None? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item C, approval of Top Youth Speakers Think Kindness Agreement. Ms. McKessie, would you read the motion, please?
I move to approve the Top Youth Speakers Agreement for the all-inclusive speaking fee at a total cost of $20,250, subject to audit and solicitor's review.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Pilot.
I can briefly explain this one for the benefit of our community. Hannah Devlin, one of our South SAB members, actually referenced this assembly in her report. Think Kindness is our district charity this year. It's a nonprofit organization out of Nevada. They do amazing work with schools. So what we have in this agenda item is a total of 21 assemblies across our 15 schools. As Hannah had indicated, they issue a kindness challenge. It's a 15-day challenge. So our elementary, middle, and high school students will all be going through this experience. So it's not just a one and done type experience, but it's really meant to have an impact on the culture of the school and the culture of how kids frankly treat each other. And adults get in on the action as well. So with this being part of our district charity, we have 2 casual days for our adults during the school year, and the money that we are raising is going to go to pay the fee for schools who are in need to be able to have this same experience at their schools. So it's something that we're really excited about, and we hope it meets your approval this evening.
That'll be our act of kindness.
Sounds good. We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments? Any objections? There are none. Please record this, Ms. Rice is passing unanimously. Item D, Act 1 Index Resolution. Ms. Thomas, would you read the motion, please?
I move to approve the resolution as found in the attachment to this agenda indicating to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Department of Education, that Council Rock School District will limit local taxation to an increase no greater than 2.4% compliant with the Act 1 index.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Comments, questions?
As we say every year, it doesn't mean we're going to increase it 2.4%. It just means we won't go above it.
You beat me to it.
I knew some. Jerry, in thoughts of Jerry are running through my head.
In honor of Jerry.
Yes, in honor of Jerry.
Who is on business travel? Any other comments, questions, objections? Hearing none, this motion passes unanimously. Item E, approval of capital improvement projects. Dr. Thorwald, would you read the motion, please?
Sure. This one's a two-parter. If you recall, I'm going to read the first motion, and we'll see if that passes, and if not, we've got a second motion queued up. I move to authorize the engineer of record, DeHuey Engineering Incorporated, to perform the investigations, design, documentation, and bid phase services for all work as described in the attached memorandum for bid bundle number 2 at an estimated project cost not to exceed $4,700,000, which includes estimated architect engineering fees of $253,982, subject to audit and solicitor's review.
Second.
Second, Ms. McKessie, thank you. Comments, questions? All right.
So can we get some explanation and just, I'm Doug, I'm sorry, I was looking for you. Just remind us where this extra funding is coming from. So the standard is 3 million. You're asking for 4.7, I think the motion was.
Yeah, I'll let Bob speak to the funding portion of this.
Okay.
If you remember, last year we accumulated funds, so there's about $3.6 million available accumulated in the capital reserve from last year, and we moved another, I think, 3.2 million or something such as that, 3.3 million. So the accumulation plus the transfer we had this year is about $6.6 million in the fund now. We would be using $4.7 million of that.
And you think the remainder that's in that fund is sufficient for us?
Capital reserve fund is really surpluses from the general fund where you can move it over to accumulate funds for capital use. So I think it's appropriate. Would I like more money in there? As Doug probably would. Yeah, it would be great if we could have more money, but this is where we are right now. So yeah, this is the appropriate use and appropriate way to handle this.
And Doug, why are these extra funds needed this year? What's pressing? I understand that you want more every year, and we bring it back down to 3 or close to it. But what's compelling this year about it?
Sure. Well, I want to be clear. I don't want more. The buildings want more.
I know the building.
So I just want to be clear about that. what's needed this year is at 8.3 million in order to keep up with where we are. And a lot of this happens to be from years and years of not addressing all of the right things that we should have addressed long before many members of this board were here. So this isn't something that's on the board today. It's just an accumulation of those projects. So I have deferred work. So until we catch up with all of that deferred work, we really can't apply the typical 1% to 2% of the monies to address capital projects each year. When we do, then we'll be in better shape in terms of the funding. So, with the 4.7, we'll be able to address many of the projects that, we need to. There's still many that we won't, but it's certainly a step up from the 3 million, that we were previously providing. So I'd certainly appreciate the consideration.
And I think that it's worth saying, just for the public, we're talking about big dollars without a big presentation here. We've discussed at the past 2 committee meetings, if anybody wants to go back and see specifically what these projects were and how the conversation evolved around the decision to bring them to the agenda. So it's not something that we're thinking about on the spot.
And then there was some adjustment in the plan by Mr. Taylor based on board input and board priorities.
And I made those adjustments. The synthetic floors at the 2 elementary schools in particular, what was requested to be added, and that was done.
And there was some discussion about the scoreboard and PA.
And those were removed, yes.
Right, and those were removed. So yeah, there was extensive discussion and adjustment. It does represent a significant sum of money. This is not in any way new construction or renovation. This is maintenance type work, remedial type work, if you will.
It's preventative maintenance type projects, correct.
Right.
And I think Doug's point to the percentage of the budget for maintenance was a good one. So I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate the explanation for both.
Good. Other comments, questions? Are there objections? Hearing none, we'll record this motion as passing unanimously. Takes us to item F, an RFP. Ms. McKessie, would you read the motion for item F, please?
I move to approve the agreement between the Council Rock School District and Schrader Group Architecture, LLC, for the professional services outlined in the attached proposal dated October 25th, 2017, for the renovations and additions to Rolling Hills Elementary School at a total cost not to exceed $1,078,210,006, with the authorization to proceed with only the pre-designed services not to exceed $26,600, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
We don't usually word that motion that way, do we? Like, we're only approving at this point the 26,000, right?
What I'm asking for is to approve the agreement in its entirety, but to authorize the architect to only move forward with the phase 1 portion of their services.
I think to your point that we don't usually put the value of the whole thing, only the value, even though we do approve the whole contract, but just pay the first. It sounded it was a little different, yeah.
So in other words, if there will be another discussion as to whether they go past that.
What I would do is come back to you in January and say, is the architect authorized to proceed with the phase 2 schematic design phase services for the building? What this is today is the site work that's required to do site investigations before the onset of any adverse weather that would prohibit them from doing so. So the next 3 motions for the architect, for the construction manager, and for the testing agency is to go out to the site, perform some geotechnical investigations, soils conditions, the topography survey, infiltration testing, things such as that, so that after you go through and you work through the demographic study and continue with the redistricting, if the will of the board is to continue with this renovation project after that point, I would ask in January or so to move forward with the rest of the work. So this is approving all of the firms for the entire project, but only to proceed with the first phase of work.
So for this motion here, because there's two more that are associated,
Yes.
this one's to do an assessment of the site, and this one is time sensitive?
Yes, these are time sensitive. All three motions are, yes.
And why are G and H time sensitive as well? Do they also involve assessment that has to be done before weather?
The geotechnical is, the architectural services include the civil engineer. Everything is under one umbrella. So they are having their civil engineer come out and do the topography survey. They have to be able to see the ground in order to understand what all the elevations are and what the existing site conditions are. They're required to perform some wetland delineations. Likely they'll find none on that site, but it's a requirement. There is electromagnetic utility study that we generally find out where any utilities are, anything major. In addition, they will need a infiltration test to understand how the stormwater design would work for that site. So earth engineering would be hired as a second part of this to do those investigations. They'll do test borings, probes, a double ring infiltration test to see what kind of infiltration the site, the permeability of the site. And Dewey Engineering has a small fee, and they basically look at all of the topography drawings, make sure that the CAD files are adequate for use at a later time. They'll double check the site utilities and things. It's another set of eyes that's helpful in that early phase. So that's what all three.
So you have to do all three to do the upfront work that is time sensitive because of weather?
Yes.
And the contracts are terminable on relatively short notice. So if the, as Mr. Taylor typically delivers them to me for review. So as on the, I guess most recently on the Hillcrest project, if the board decides that it wants to put the brakes on the project, it has the ability to do that under the contract.
Yeah, I guess what I struggle with is as we talk about the potential cost of $800,000 to redistrict. I'm not opposed, as I said, when we saw new information about population to renovating Rolling Hills, but given the fact that balance could be an issue as we get into redistricting, I'm apprehensive to make any decisions on buildings when we might regret them a little bit later. I'm starting to sound like somebody else over there, but okay.
Don't be sorry, Andy. You're talking the right. You're saying the right things. Do we have to include this? Do we have to approve it for the full $1 million? Is that why can't we just approve it for the 26,000? I really have no problem with the idea of having the architecture take a look. The architect taking a look at the property to see what we can do with that property and what work has to be done. Because I think that's what I'm hearing you say. So I have no problem spending the 26,000 for that, but I have an issue with the $1,078,000 being embedded in the motion because I'm always concerned about that train leaving the station. That in my experience on this board, every time the train leaves the station, it never comes back.
Sure.
I feel like it's Groundhog Day. And I'm not suggesting that about you. I don't mean it that way. I feel like we put that in there as a protection several years ago because folks felt that they didn't understand the full picture of what they were ultimately voting on. So I'm not saying that's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it, but I feel like that's how we came to this place because people felt like we were just 26,000 here without knowing what the big picture was.
That's a great point.
It's not, if the board would rather approve the initial phase of each one of these agreements, I don't know if we have to reword this in any way, but I think we could consider that.
Doug, you're going to come back with phase two. We have to vote on the next chunk of money, correct?
We vote on every bit of it.
Yeah, so
what this motion...
Can I just say one thing? We just did the whole redistricting thing because we were worried about kids. These kids in this school just thought for the last 6 months their school was going to close. The reason $800,000 is there is because now
we thought the numbers were going up 2 months ago. Now suddenly they're going up at lightning speed. It's not like we're not going to need the classrooms. I don't know where we think we're going to put these kids. And so I disagree with everything. I completely support this motion. If we're leaving this school open and that's the direction we're heading, then we owe it to that community to say, oh, we're not going to leave it open and let your roof leak, and we're not going to touch your school. Maybe we'll put you through all this again in 2 years. We owe it to them to move forward and investigate and fix that school that's been ignored. I'm sorry. OA just did all that stuff to care about kids. What about the kids in this elementary school?
I don't think it has anything to do with caring about the kids. I think it has to do with being thoughtful in your approach. And if this increase in the population is a small pocket of an increase because of the recession, then that's something we have to look at. We can't just write a check for $37 million out of guilt for what
we're not.
Well, it feels that way.
I'm only approving 26.
Yeah, and to clarify, just so I understand and public understands,
I wasn't done with my
what
comments,
this
just for the record. Go ahead.
this motion authorizes the expenditure of $26,600, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Byler?
My point is, as I said at the facilities meeting, that I would like the children in that school, as I've always said, and I said in the beginning of this, to have what they need to be warm, safe, and dry in their schools. But I don't want to go in and create expenses for the district that we may not need in the future. So that's my concern. I'm not saying I don't want to do the renovations. I'm saying I want to be very sure in the data. We've already made some bad decisions because of bad data. Let's just step back a second and make sure that everything is done as it needs to be done before we go spend this extra money.
Ms. Brooks?
So we're not committing to a plan of what this renovation would look like. This is the preliminary work that is needed regardless of what the architectural plan is. And I agree that, we should not, first of all, obviously, I would think that everyone knows that I support the renovation of this school. But I would not support, without the appropriate data, any plan or concept of what that building should look like until we understand that it's meeting the needs of our community. So I certainly support this $26,000. Let's get the groundwork established so that we can move forward and do what this school will need, which will be supported by a report from Sundance and the redistricting plan and everything else, so that we know that we are creating a footprint that matches where our students are. But I just want to say, I continue to be bothered by this throwing around of $800,000 extra for a team and this and that. We need that team regardless. This is the cost of doing business to educate our kids. And it's not like it's some random added expense that we're taking and adding on to a building and doing. It does not fall into the same arena for me as some of these other conversations. I think it's very misleading to the public to hear this and talk about it in that context.
Are there any other comments, questions on this motion? We have a second. We have objections to this motion.
Can I just make one more comment? I wanted to let my feelings be out there. I do not object, as I think I said to Doug, to having this exploration done at the small amount, the 26,000, relatively small amount. I just want to caution, I guess I just have to say it out loud, that we have to be very careful in how we proceed. So I will vote for these motions tonight, but it does concern. That's my point.
Thank you. Are there any objections to this particular motion? Hearing none, we'll record it as passing unanimously. Please, Ms. Rice. Item G, Ms. Brooks, would you read this motion?
I move to approve the agreement between the Council Rock School District and Dewey Engineering, Inc. for the professional services outlined in the attached proposal for the renovations and additions to Rolling Hills Elementary School at a total cost not to exceed $673,051, with the authorization to proceed with only the pre-designed services not to exceed $14,000, subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bialik. Are there questions or comments? Objections? None. This passes unanimously. And we move to item H. Mr. Block, would you read the motion, please?
I move to approve the agreement between the Council Rock School District and Earth Engineering Incorporated for the professional services outlined in the attached proposal dated October 17th, 2017 for the renovations and additions to Rolling Hills Elementary School at a total cost not to exceed $27,650, including a $5,000 testing allowance subject to audit.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Biley. Questions, comments, objections? There are none. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Personnel actions. Item I, Ms. Mulholland. would you
Can
read-
we take those two together like we did last time?
That works for me. Ms. Mulholland, would you read the motions for both items I and J, please?
Okay. I move to approve the personnel actions as contained in the attachments to this agenda. And I move to approve the personnel actions addendum as contained in the attachments to this agenda.
Second.
Comments, questions? I have a comment. In the personnel actions, there are retirements of 2 longtime teachers who will be leaving our full-time employment in the district in the next few weeks. They've both been with the Council Rock School District since 1999, 18 years ago. Sally Heller is retiring next month. She's a music teacher of strings at Maureen M. Welsh and Churchville. And Carol Keys is retiring in January. She is a teacher assistant at Newtown Middle School. And I would like to thank very much Ms. Heller and Ms. Keys for your service to the students of the Council Rock School District. So thank you very much to Ms. Heller and Ms. Keys on their retirement. The next item is the solicitor's report. We didn't vote on the motion. Are there objections to items I and J? None? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
I did not have much in my report. There was one important item that I briefed the board on, better discussed in executive session, if at all. But if there's no further discussion on that item, that's all I have, Mr. Tate.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Moving on to board items, number 1, item A is old business. Anyone? Item B is new business.
I think I have some new business. I'd like to just talk about this publicly. We get these appeals for late charges to our tax bills periodically through the year. So if someone pays their property taxes late, there's often an appeal, and there are various reasons. We've had reasons of medical issues like, I remember cancer, and sometimes it's postage, things like that. Obviously, medical issues are severe, but one of the most recent ones was the bill, I think, was mailed to the developer of the property. I don't remember which one it was, maybe Toll Brothers, and Toll Brothers never forwarded it to the homeowner, and so the homeowner never received a bill, and then they were saddled with a late fee. We have this blanket policy that seems to be that we just don't accept any appeals. And I understand the solicitor has some hard feelings about that, but not hard as far as negative, but just strong feelings about it. But I think it's something that we should talk about. It just seems kind of unfair when someone doesn't receive their tax bill at all, that we penalize them. And I think there should be an ability to really have an appeal, because at this point there's essentially no appeal. We get the information, we're told we shouldn't really do anything with it, and then it just passes. So I'm interested in other board members' comments on that.
But in that last case, with the Toll Brothers not forwarding the bill, shouldn't they pay the late fee if they were negligent?
I guess that's a different issue, but the issue is that we have the ability to waive that fee for a reasonable cause. I think that we have things come before us all the time, whether it's discipline things or not, where we make judgment decisions, and it seems like we absolutely have no judgment on this as a board, because that's our protocol.
And just from the lawyer's perspective, the reason that I have relatively strong opinions about this is because I think the statute is set up so that the district any taxing authority should consider waiver of a penalty in a case where the district has made a mistake, or the taxing authority has made a mistake. I think the statute is pretty clearly set up to allow a taxpayer to petition the governing body of the agency in that kind of a case. Those cases are very few and far between in my experience. I've almost at this school district, I don't think I recall ever experiencing a case like that. My concern about waiving penalties in cases where the district has not made a mistake with respect to issuance of a bill or failure to acknowledge receipt of payment is because if the district starts making case-by-case exceptions, it could lead to a situation where it treats similarly situated taxpayers differently, which could create a constitutional problem with respect to the district's taxing authority and its authority to tax its residents. And so my view is that the clearest way to avoid that kind of possibility is to say, look, if we've made a mistake with respect to taxes, if the district has made a mistake, we'll consider that and evaluate it. But if a late payment is not the result of the district having done something wrong, it's much safer legally to say, well, the law is what the law is, and you owe a penalty. In addition to the concern I would have with jeopardizing the uniformity of the district's tax collection process, in other words, the potential for treating similarly situated taxpayers differently, is it just would create a real practical problem in how you evaluate cases, who does it, whether it's a board or a subcommittee of the board, and how that decision-making body would know that it's making the same decision based on the same policies and procedures every time, particularly where you have new board members or different members of whatever committee would hear those cases. So your point is not lost on me, Mr. Bialik, but that's where I've come from in the past and tonight with respect to advising in favor of a very uniform policy that sort of everyone understands, for better or for worse.
Could I just say, in this specific situation, the interim bill was issued to the property and it was sent to the address of the owner at the time. The county then changed the owner as it was sold, and it was a timing difference. So in no way would I tell you that the district did anything wrong or the tax collector did anything wrong. We did send it to the owner of record that we had on our records at the time. So I just want to make sure you know that it's an unfortunate thing, completely understand it, and in an interim bill such as that, the new property owner could have felt like the builder had paid that because they put a house on it. There's an interim bill, it occurs, so that property owner did not know a bill was coming, unlike an annual bill that comes each year and they know it's coming and they may say it got lost in the mail or something like that. That's different, but I want to make sure you also understand that it wasn't something anyone did in error. We did send it to the property owner at the time.
No, and I wasn't implying that. But I appreciate you saying. So when, Mr. Cox, when you were talking about mistakes that the district makes, does that translate and carry through to our appointed, I mean, they're elected tax collectors, but we essentially appoint them to collect our taxes. So if the tax collector makes a mistake, is that considered a district mistake? We've certainly had those issues.
My position would be that that would not be a mistake that the district should accept responsibility for. Like the tax, in other words, my view is the tax collector has, particularly for real estate taxes, has a statutory obligation independent of the district's responsibility. And so that would be an issue that the taxpayer would have to take up with their elected tax collector. That's my view. So my advice would be to limit consideration of waivers to situations where the district itself has made a mistake.
We have other comments? Question, Dr. Thorwald.
Oh, I've got a new one when you're done with.
All right. Well,
I'm done, thank you.
thank you. Dr. Thorwald.
And this is probably more directed to the administration than the board, but we just cleaned up the 7th graders through with this redistricting stuff and the closing of Richboro Middle School. I'll remind you, and it's never lost on me, and we need to take it up now too. We also have staff in that building that needs to know where they're going. And so I just want to put that bug in the ear that, you know, as a good employer, we need to tell them where they're going. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm not in any way saying you did anything wrong, but that should be next.
No, it's a fair comment, and certainly we have been actively working on that with Mr. Desco and Mrs. Taylor taking the lead role on that. So they've gone out, met with all 3 faculties. We have a process. Some paperwork is due at the end of this month. So that process is well underway. Thank you.
I asked the same question of Dr. Fraser a couple of months ago, and I was pleasantly surprised to hear that the process began internally a significant time ago. Last year. So.
I'm actually not surprised it's happening. I just want to be mindful. We need to tell everyone it's happening.
No, I asked the same question for the same reason. That's good. Is there any other new business? Public comment. We'll have a second session of public comment. Does anyone wish to comment? Ms. Carroll.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. Too bad I only have 3 minutes because you did a lot of good things tonight. A lot of good things right. I'd write you an email, but none of you ever even say I got your email, except for a few of you. One of the reasons why I came back to talking all the time, I used to write the board emails and they went into nowhere. I mean nowhere. Not even thank you for your email. So if you want to save some money, I suggest that you use the 4 classrooms at Salt Finestone for free and the one at Wrightstown for free, and you got 5 classrooms instead of adding any on to Wrightstown. If you want to save some money, I suggest if you have 4 classrooms at Salt Finestone, why don't you bus the kindergartners over there while there's a renovation? Because they only go for a half a day. Why should they ride the bus all the way down to Holland? Couldn't they just go to Salt Finestone for a year? There's plenty of ways to save money, but this district is infatuated with where everybody's going to go, and not what everybody is going to be educated by. So I suggest that at one of the academic standards meetings that we have a session on why we want balance. Why is balance good? Because I kicked up my heels for 2 years that you were going to make North the same size as Holland when I knew there were so much less kids at North, and now we're going to, rightfully so, I mean, I don't disagree with doing it, but North is going to not be a capacity for a couple of years. So I think we need to focus on all the good things that are at North and all the good things that are at South that the other school doesn't have, and how we can transfer that from one school to the other. These are the things I want you to be talking about. Not if, and I still disagree with taking 40 kindergartners out of Northampton and sending them up to Wrightstown. But that's what that plan suggested. I only have 35 seconds left. 2 of the board members here may not be here at the next meeting, and I'd like to thank you for your service. I'd like to thank you, Kathleen, for putting your hand up into what was a tempest in a teapot, and for caring so much, and for going out and trying to meet the constituents and see what the people think. And Denise Brooks, you have cared so much about the community and gone to so many meetings, and you have fought for what the community wants to. I sure hope you're here next time. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. Carroll. Does anyone else wish to comment? I think we're ready for a motion to adjourn.
Board comment, board comment.
Board comment, board comment.
I have a quick one, if that's okay.
Please.
We heard about the exploits of the South Athletics Department from the advisory committee. I think there's one at North worth calling out just because it's timely. The Council Rock North men's soccer team had a great year that they just finished up. They won SOL, but more impressively, as a 19th seed in districts, they made it to the finals, lost a heartbreaker, and then went all the way to the state quarterfinals. It's it's a great group of kids, in particular the seniors. So congratulations to them on a great season.
It was a great accomplishment.
I have a quick one that I probably should have brought up under old business, but we talked about this at a finance committee meeting. But this week, Mr. Reinhardt and I met with members of the Newtown Rotary Club to discuss the signs. So there are signs, just as a reminder, there are signs on the fence at Council Rock North Stadium that money was raised through Cruza, I think it was, to help fund the turf and maintain the turf at the stadium. That agreement is over with, and Mr. Reinhardt was going to take up the reins and solicit advertisement on these signs, and collectively, I think we thought that was not a great idea. Not that you can't do it, but we don't want you spending your time on that. We have community members and community organizations that are really, really good at raising money and already raise significant amounts of money for different programs at Council Rock. So I reached out to one group, the Newtown Rotary Club. As I said, Mr. Reinhardt and I met with them. They do have an interest. They're going to take it back to their board in a month or so and let us know if they have an official vote to do that. In the idea of community and doing things collectively for the group, their position was any community group that wants to get involved, we're happy to spearhead it. So if the Quanians, the Chamber, the Exchange Club also want to get involved, good for us, better have more soldiers out there raising money. So it's moving along nicely. It's really a nice win-win situation for everybody. So just want to keep you abreast. If anybody has any objections to this, please let me know now so we don't drag people into this and then have an issue.
I think it's a great point. Just to add to it and maybe add some momentum, and I got to give Mr. Grupp some credit because he's had an idea as well, slightly different angle. PTOs, any 501c3 really, where investment benefits the district and potentially having an arrangement that gives them incentive to find dollars is out there. So I've had a similar conversation with the folks at Caruso now. So I think probably worth a bigger conversation, but definitely support having folks go out and do the work for us to probably have a better chance of securing things that are good for our kids without taking away the capacity of the team that needs to educate them.
Yeah, we can get into. Yeah, I'm sorry. We can get into the details as we move along, but the Rotary is a 501c3 also, and we can work it out in many different ways. So again, any community group that wants to be involved, I think it's good.
Yep, agreed.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bally. Thank you, Mr. Block.
I have a comment.
Ms. Brooks.
So you may be aware that there was an election last week. And so I just wanted to make a comment because I'm not sure that all the information about the election, at least in my region, is something that everyone is aware of. And so as on election night, when the votes were counted for my region, the final tally came up as my opponent receiving 2 votes more than me. And so that vote that night is considered the unofficial vote. And this past Monday, the Board of Elections conducted what's called the official vote. And at that time, it was discovered that a magical number of 2 absentee ballots in one of the regions were improper, meaning that the voters were registered to a certain region and the absentee ballots that they received were not for that region. And so they were part of my region, and this school board race should have been on that ballot. The ballot that they received had no line for school board, no ability to vote for school board. So this was discovered during the unofficial count, and at that time, the ballots were sort of set aside. The next day, the county commissioners addressed this issue, and a motion was made to set those
those ballots aside, and it didn't get a second, and so it sort of loomed there. So it appeared at that point that perhaps the county would certify the vote with what was counted at the time of the unofficial vote. But today I had an attorney file an appeal with the Court of Common Pleas to look at this again. And so I'm looking forward to having a day in court to look at this. I want to set aside the fact that the outcome of the election actually hinges on this, because at the heart of what my appeal is that I think it is inappropriate to presume what a voter would have done if given the option to actually have a vote. So my filing is simply asking for the law to be followed, and I really think that it protects all the voters in the county and in the state. It's a precedent that I think protects the integrity of elections, and it ensures that all votes are assigned appropriately and with the consent of the voters. And so, you know, as I sit here now, I don't know if this is the last time I will sit in this seat or if I will be here next month. And so since this potentially is my last opportunity to be here, I just want to say that it has been a sincere honor and a privilege to serve in this role. I took the representation of my constituency very seriously, and when I chose to run 4 years ago, I certainly did not have a crystal ball on how challenging these 4 years would be, but I certainly went in with eyes wide open, and I knew that the issues of school consolidation and redistricting were coming up, and I believed and I knew that Council Rock would enter a chapter probably more challenging than any I had seen in the 15 years that I sat on that side of the room. And admittedly, before I chose to run 4 years ago, I wondered if I really wanted to do that. And in making the decision to do it, I really did think two things. One was, since one of the schools that I represented was clearly going to be a potential closure, I knew that if the data showed that Rolling Hills had to close, that I would be a good leader for that community and stand before them and explain to them why. But I also knew that if the data showed that that school should stay open, that I believed that I could be a fighter to help make sure that the data was followed and the best decision for our community was made. So I couldn't be prouder of, you know, knowing that we are now on the other side of that. I couldn't be even more delighted that the issue of the grandfathering was settled tonight, and we can finally put that to bed. And so I thank my community. The very best thing that has happened to me in the 4 years that I have been serving on this board is the people that I have met in the community and engaged with. You all made me do this job better, and with pride and a lot of satisfaction. So I don't know who'll be sitting here next month. I certainly hope it's me. And if not, nothing changes with my feelings of wishing nothing but the best for this district and how we serve our students.
Thank you. Is there any other further board comment? If none, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. We're adjourned.